This meeting is being recorded.
All right. We'll let some people fill in, the attendees of the meeting, before we call the meeting, the regular HPC meeting of March 13th to order. All right. Brian, do you want to go ahead and call the meeting to order?
Yes, it's 6:34 p.m. So I'm calling this regularly scheduled meeting of the Jersey City Historic Preservation Commission to order.
Okay, please be advised that in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act, the notice, time and date of this regularly scheduled meeting of the Jersey City HPC has been sent to the Jersey Journal, the Jersey City Reporter, and Ellis Specialito on Thursday. When was Thursday?
March 9th.
Thank you. Thursday, March 9th. Same notice has been sent to the clerk's office for posting on the bulletin board outside of the clerk's office in City Hall, as well as on the city's website. I have proof of this notice here in evidence, which I will go ahead and share my screen. Bridget, if you wouldn't mind marking this as B1.
Okay, this will be B1 in evidence.
Thank you. Move to a roll call. Commissioner Gucciardo,
Here.
Commissioner Lewis,
Present.
Commissioner Sakong appears to be absent. Commissioner Amatuzzo,
Here.
Commissioner Stango is absent. Commissioner Gordon,
Present.
Commissioner Gunther,
Here.
Commissioner Garriga is absent. Commissioner Cronin,
Here.
Commissioner Sandkamp, I'm sorry, Vice Chair Sandkamp.
Here. You hear me again?
Yeah, gotcha, Tony. And Chairman Blazak.
Here.
Okay, there are 8 members of the commission in attendance tonight. 5 affirmative votes are needed for a certificate of appropriateness. All right, moving down the agenda. We do not have minutes to approve at this meeting. The February minutes will be up on the 1st April meeting. Correspondence, all copies, correspondence, application materials are linked on the agenda through the case number, the blue link at the top of each case. For announcements, we are actually going to shuffle around the agenda a little bit tonight, and we are going to hear H23037 first, and then move on with the rest of the agenda in order. Other than that, staff has no announcements, so we can move to open public comment. If there are any members of the public in attendance this evening who would like to speak regarding matters not on tonight's agenda, so it's application, so you would like to speak regarding historic preservation, not for 591, not for 100 York, and not for 75 Sussex, it would be for something else. You can use the raise hand function. Okay, so I see 2 hands raised. And again, I will say this is not for 591, not for 100 York, not for 75 Sussex. We will have separate open public comment for those. Okay, so I see 2 hands raised. If there's a commissioner who would like to make a motion to open public comment.
Motion, please.
Okay,
Second.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Before I go ahead and promote the 2 people who have their hands raised, I will just briefly run over the rules for public comment for the HPC. We'll promote you. You will have the ability to turn on your camera and turn on your microphone. And we will give you 3 minutes to address the commission, again, on matters not on tonight's agenda. Following your 3 minutes, you'll be moved back into an attendee. Prior to giving any testimony, you will be asked to be sworn in. You'll state your name, state and spell your name for the record. Okay, so the first person I'm going to promote is Nazrin. All right, so Nazrin, you do have to accept the panelists. So I'm gonna. Okay, Nazrin, you should be able to unmute yourself and turn off your mic. Turn on your mic and turn on your camera to be sworn in? Nazrin, are you able to?
Yes, can you
Great.
hear me?
Yes, we can.
All
So if you wouldn't mind being
All right.
sworn in first?
And would you
Yes.
raise your right hand to be sworn? Do you
Yes.
swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes,
Thank you. Could you state and spell your full name for the record?
sure. My name is Nasrin Nourizadeh. My first name is spelled as N as in Nancy, ASRIN. My last name is NOURIZADEH. And I live at 4 Beacon Way, apartment 1012, Jersey City, New Jersey.
Is this about 591 Montgomery Street?
That is correct. And I apologize
Maggie was
because I
quite-
couldn't
Maggie-
hear you.
Maggie was quite clear that this is about testimony about things not on tonight's agenda. So if this is about that item, you're gonna have to be, wait until that item is heard.
Okay,
No worries. I just wanted to let you know that I couldn't hear you, so I apologize if I,
Okay,
started
Okay, thank
speaking too early. Yes.
all right, sounds good. We will wait for your testimony then. Okay. The next person I see for public comment, again, this is not for 591 Montgomery or any of the other applications. This is for something that is not on the agenda. Is a Verghese. I apologize if I butcher your name, but I'm gonna go ahead and promote you to panelist. All right, you should be able to unmute yourself and turn on your camera.
Yes, hi there.
Hi.
We have to
Raise
be,
your
we
right hand
have
to
to
be-
swear you in first.
Did you raise
Sure
your right
thing.
hand to be sworn? Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And could you state and spell your full name for the record?
It's VERGHESC as first name. Last name is Thanjan, THANJAN.
Thank you.
Okay, your 3 minutes begins now.
Yes, for effective public discussion on this board and other boards, we do need the appropriate time frame for the agenda to be posted and distributed. There's continually problems with that. I don't think it's really connected to the commissioners on hand who's listening, but this might be something follow up for the city representation of the Dan Reardon. If you have any influence on city planning, I'm constantly asking them to post agendas in a timely fashion. So just for better public comments and understanding what's on the agenda, something has to be done. And I'm constantly reminding people where's the agenda and things. So
Is this in regards to the HPC agenda or a different board?
Yes, today was HPC. I was begging for an agenda. Usually they do an email send out, which I normally get. No emails. Then I was reaching out emails to people in city planning, and finally got something got posted. This stuff should be posted earlier than
Yeah,
just today.
our agenda was posted to the data portal last Wednesday.
I disagree with that. For today's date, which is March 13th, it wasn't here this morning. I have to send out an email. I don't have your email, Ms. O'Neill, but if you want to, I could forward you the emails which I was sending out to Amy Lopez and another member of city planning that there is nothing posted.
I'll take your word for it. I apologize for any confusion.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you. All right. If there are any other members of the public who would like to speak in public comments. All right, staff sees no hands raised and recommends a motion to close. public
Motion to
comment.
close.
Second,
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right,
The only thing I want to add to that is there are, we do comply with the sunshine laws, which Maggie reads out at the beginning of every meeting, which it has to be posted both on the bulletin board outside City Hall, and there are different postings in different, I believe, newspapers. Maybe that's a little old fashioned in this day and age, but we do make sure to comply with the state's sunshine laws. So yeah, that's all. I just wanted to clarify with that.
Great.
Okay. So that takes us, so again, we're going to shuffle around. We're just going to go to case 9A, which is 100 York Street, and then we're going to go back to 591 Montgomery. So we're going to go with 9A. This is H23037. This is Ji Yang, applicant on behalf of Muteki Ramen, tenant at 100 York Street, block 14301, lot 12. This is in the Paulus Hook Historic District and is for a certificate of appropriateness for the installation of a pin letter sign for Muteki Ramen at the front facade of 100 York Street, rear of 247 Washington Street, a contributing altered circuit 1865 mixed-use building in the Paulus Hook Historic District. And do we have the applicants promoted, Maggie?
I was able to promote Z. I'm unsure if there's anyone else who will be providing testimony on this. If there is, you can just use the raise hand function and I can promote you. Z, you should be able to unmute yourself. Great.
Hi, good evening.
All right.
Swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. And if you can state and spell your name for the record.
Yes. The first name is G-H-I and the last name is Y-A-N-G. Ji Yang.
Thank you.
Great. Are you able to share your screen to show the rendering of the sign, or would you like me to?
Can you please share this rendering of the sign? I didn't know how to share the screen here.
That's okay. I got it.
Okay.
Just give me
Thanks.
a moment. All right. So we can start. Why don't you go ahead and tell the commission where I'll show the front facade photo. You can go ahead and walk the commission through the location and the signage and things like that.
Yeah, sure.
Can you guys all see my screen?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, so what we are going to install the pin letter sign is the banner that we just see like under the red roof there, and then literally the sign itself is pretty similar to the banners, the size of the banner letter right now, the letters that you see on the banner here. So there will be nothing larger than this. And then I also bring a sample with me right now that you can take a look.
So I have the rendering up, and yes, okay.
Okay.
Maggie or G, can you just clarify what material is it being mounted to? Do you know what that material is where the letters are going to be mounted into?
That's aluminum material.
Yeah, that's the sign itself. I mean the actual material on the facade. Is it wood? Is it a wood panel there?
It's a wood panel there. Yes.
Oh.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
Okay. Do any other commissioners have any questions? It's a pretty straightforward application.
Yeah, we should have more like this.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Is there any lighting proposed at all?
Oh, no, not really. Yeah,
Okay.
because there was already lights exist on like under the roof there, as you can see.
I see.
We
So you're just
didn't
gonna
make any
use that.
changes. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay. Any other commissioner questions? All right. There are no other commissioner questions and no other testimony. We can move into public comment on this one. Anyone want to make a motion to open public comment? on
Motion
this?
to open public comment on 100 York Street.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, if there are any members of the public present tonight who would like to speak regarding this application, please use the raise hand function at the bottom of the screen. Alternatively, if you're on the phone, you can press *9. Okay. Staff sees no hands raised and recommends a motion to close public comment.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Walk you guys through the staff report really quickly on this. Go down to staff recommendations and comments. You know, as the presentation was clear, this is a very simple sign, complies with all of our requirements within the historic district. Staff does not think that the installation of this sign is going to have any adverse effect on the historic structure itself or on the Paulus Hook Historic District as a whole. And we do recommend approval of this COI. We have some pretty limited conditions, honestly. It's a installation that doesn't really call for a great amount of conditions. So just, of course, if the sign changes, which, you know, the letters are made, so it's probably not going to, but if anything changes, it does need to come back to the HPC, and that it only approves work for the sign itself, no additional work as a result of this.
Okay.
Okay. Do any commissioners have any questions for staff? Okay. Again, staff recommends a motion to approve the certificate of appropriateness for the signage.
Thank you
Motion
so
to approve.
Second.
Second.
All right. Take a roll call vote. Commissioner Gucciardo,
Aye.
Commissioner Amatuzzo,
Aye.
Commissioner Gunther,
Aye.
Commissioner Lewis,
Aye.
Commissioner Cronin,
Aye.
Commissioner Gordon,
Aye.
Commissioner Garriga is absent, Commissioner Sakong is absent, Commissioner Stango is absent, Vice Chairman Sankamp,
Aye.
and Chairman Blazak.
Aye.
Okay, there are 8 votes in favor, none against, no abstentions. The certificate of appropriateness is granted.
Thank you so much. Have a
No
good night.
problem.
Good luck.
I'll
Congratulations,
follow
Mr.
up.
Yang.
I'll follow up before the end of the week on getting you the paperwork so you can move on to zoning.
Thank you.
Great.
Okay,
Alright.
so with that, we took the short one out of the way. So then we're going to go back to old business. This is case H21-354, Jennifer Porter Esquire, on behalf of Jones Hall Associates LP owner. This is 591 Montgomery Street, the former Jersey City Medical Center Complex, Block 13601, Lot 1, in the R4 zone. And this is for a recommendation to the Jersey City Planning Board for the subdivision of Lot 1 within the National and State Register listed former Jersey City Medical Center complex into 2 new lots containing the contributing Jones Hall, constructed circa 1932, Lot 1.01, and the proposed new construction of a 17-story mixed-use building, restructured parking, a healthcare facility, and 98 residential units, Lot 1.02. This is a recommendation to the Jersey City Zoning Board of Adjustment and is carried from the January 31st, 2022 special HPC meeting. Maggie, have we
Yeah,
promoted?
so, yeah, I have Jennifer promoted. I also promoted Rich. Jennifer, who else should I be promoting?
That's it.
Perfect. Okay. And then before we give you guys the floor, I do just want to note, Commissioner Cronin was not at the previous hearing. However, Jennifer, if you're comfortable, he can affirm that he has read and reviewed the transcript and feels comfortable voting tonight.
That's fine.
Great. Dan, you affirm that you've read the transcript?
Yes, I have.
Great.
And I just wanted to, I know, Commissioner Cronin read the transcript. We also got the transcript ahead of the meeting. I guess this is more for the architect when he takes us through this, just to, maybe summarize this on maybe a bit of a high level, not, kind of take us through the changes from the January 2022 meeting, and you don't have to necessarily go through every single detail like you did. I know it was a year ago, but I think we all did review the transcript. So just to keep that in mind.
Would you raise your right hand to be sworn, Mr. Garber?
Yes.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. State and spell your full name for the record, please.
Richard Garber, Garber.
Thank you.
Okay, you guys should be good to go.
Great. So thank you very much for listening to this application this evening. Again, my name is Jennifer Porter and I'm the attorney for the applicant, Jones Hall Associates. We are here before the HPC this evening in connection with an application that was submitted to the zoning board back, believe it or not, in January of 2019. So a little more than 4 years ago, in connection with property located at 591 Montgomery Street. By way of very brief background, since we understand and appreciate the fact that the commission has read the transcript of the prior proceeding. And so our full intention this evening is to keep our comments brief so that we can get right to any questions or comments that the commission may have. So very briefly, by way of background, the zoning board application seeks minor subdivision and site plan approval along with use and bulk variances. The applicant is seeking to subdivide the property into 2 lots. One of those lots will contain the senior living facility that has long existed on the property, which is known as Jones Hall. The other lot is where applicant is proposing to construct a 17-story above-ground mixed-use development, which would contain 3 stories of medical use with 14 stories of multifamily housing above. And this application was referred to the HPC from the zoning board pursuant to section 40:55D-110 of the municipal land use law for review and recommendation. As the commission members may recall, the applicant had initially appeared, as you mentioned previously, in front of the HPC back last January of 2022. With regard to this project, at that time, we did receive a number of comments, both from the commission as well as its professionals and staff, and from members of the public. The applicant has taken an extensive amount of time to work to address and respond to some of the comments that have been received. Toward that end, the applicant did submit several plan iterations to planning and HPC staff. So at the staff level, we did work with them in order to address some of the comments related specifically to the design aspects of the project, as you'll hear more from Mr. Garber this evening. We did also submit last year a comment response letter from our project architect detailing those changes, as well as a supplemental report from our historic consultant. Additionally, in September of 2022, the applicant attended a community meeting with representatives of the Beacon. And in January of 2023, the applicant's representatives met with the ward councilwoman, the new ward councilwoman, in connection with this application to give her an overview of the project and to answer any questions that she had regarding the project. This evening, we intend solely to offer supplemental testimony from our project architect, Richard Garber of GRO Architects, who'll be discussing the modifications that were made to the plans. And specifically, the comments previously received and our compliance with the applicable historic design guidelines. Before Mr. Garber begins, I also wanted to briefly just take a moment to clarify some key information regarding the project. You know, we understand and recognize certainly that the commission is fully aware and fully familiar with this project and the applicable criteria for its review. But unfortunately, there do continue to be some public misconceptions regarding the project. So we just wanted to clarify just a few brief points before we begin for the benefit solely of the members of the public that are attending the meeting this evening. First, I just wanted to address the background of the site. The Jones Hall property on which the proposed development is situated is part of the former Jersey City Medical Center complex, now known as the Beacon, and is part of the National and State Registered Historic Site. The Jones Hall site, which causes some of the confusion perhaps with respect to why this site is slightly different from the remainder of the site, was the only part of the JCMC site that was subdivided and sold off in 1978 into private ownership, and then developed for senior housing, which is the current use still today. After that occurred in 1978, the remainder of the site was then sold collectively, and the entire site, including Jones Hall, was part of the nationally registered site that was done back in 1985. So even though it was under separate ownership and developed privately, it was part of the nationally registered site back in 1985. However, after the national and state registrations with respect to the entirety of the complex, the Jones Hall property did take a little bit of a different path with respect to the remainder of the complex. As the commission may be aware, the remainder of the complex has been redeveloped or repurposed in a sense for utilization as it is today, commonly known as the Beacon. The Jones Hall Center has continued and remained solely as the operation of a senior housing facility, literally since it was built in the late 1970s and early 1980s, but for the project that is in front of the board this evening. The Jones Hall site is not part of a locally designated historic district. It's not part of the Jersey City Medical Complex redevelopment area, which was part again of the Beacon's redevelopment. It's separate. It has separate zoning, which it is subject to in terms of the proposed development, and it is not part of the SHPO historic easement for the complex. But again, just to reiterate, despite those differences, it is again part of that nationally registered site, which is why we're in front of the commission this evening, obviously, to address specifically its conformance concerning the Secretary of Interior standards and related Jersey City guidelines. Our historic consultant has already provided his expert testimony and provided a supplemental report that this project satisfies the criteria. So we will not be repeating any of that testimony this evening, but felt it was important simply to mention that since the guidelines and the standards allow for the introduction of new buildings within the boundaries of historic properties, where the site conditions allow and where the design, density, and placement of new construction respect the overall character of the site, the integrity of the historic buildings, and the property setting. The guidelines also require that the new construction, while being compatible with massing, size, scale, and architectural features, do not attempt to replicate the historic buildings. As you'll hear this evening from Mr. Garber, we believe that the building does exactly that by way of its contemporary design with new building materials and techniques, but also incorporating features that are consistent with the Art Deco design of the contributing buildings within the medical center complex, so as to acknowledge the complex's historic significance. The applicant has gone to great lengths over the course of the past several years to address all of the feedback and comments it's received, particularly the feedback it's received in the meetings that we've held with HPC staff. Mr. Garber will explain to the commission as well as the public the changes that have been made since our prior appearance. As we indicated previously, we believe that all of the changes that have been made, particularly those that have been made over the course of the last year at those staff level meetings, have only served to make the project better. We are not going to represent the entirety of the application from our architect. Our intention is to walk through the changes that have been made. However, to the extent that the commission does have a question concerning our prior testimony, or there are questions from members of the public, we are happy to address any comments as they occur. And if the commissioners have no questions, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Garber.
Great. Well, thanks, everyone. I'm going to just share my screen and start my presentation. We're very happy to have this opportunity to present these changes to the board. And as Jen has suggested, and Mr. Blazak has also requested, I'm going to stick to the changes to the external envelope in ways that we feel will further blends into the historic complex while still being acknowledged as new construction. And those changes involve some substantial changes to the windows and the patterning, and I will go into those. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Great.
Yes.
So just to kind of provide some context, what you see here is the site. This is to the east of Beacon Way and to the south of Montgomery Street. And the smaller, if you can see my mouse, rectangle is Jones Hall. That is our sister building. And then the zigzag that you see here is our site. And I will remind the board that all vehicular access is off of Cornelison, not off of Beacon Way, not off of Montgomery Street. As Ms. Porter also said, we are in the R4 district that is located here, and the R4 district permits multifamily residential buildings to a height of 110 feet. We are adjacent to, but carved out of what is noted as number 4 here, which is the redevelopment plan that was dedicated to the Beacon, I think in 2005. The historic preservation easement that Ms. Porter spoke about is here. We went through great lengths to speak to SHPO at the state level to understand whose jurisdiction this was, at which point we were requested to go before this board for a recommendation. Context images, I think everyone knows the site, but I have them here. And this includes some of the tallest buildings in the city. We have heights here that range from about 205 feet all the way to the west, all the way to the south, to the highest building in the Beacon, which is 360 feet, which is on the west side of the site. This is another view of the site to the left, and to the right, you see the site with our building. Now, very quickly to go through a site plan, and some of this is repetitive, I recognize, but the Beacon was a phased development. And so you see here, there were a series of buildings that were first built on the site in 1917. That's the Laundry and Powerhouse, followed by the Margaret Haig Hospital and so forth. And then moving forward, most of the buildings that we know were implemented here between 1928 and 1934. That also included the demo of that first building, the Laundry and Powerhouse. And then the site plan was really kind of fit out to what we know of today. Back finishing in 1939, I think the final dedication was 1941, so around 1940. Now, what's interesting here is the heights, and I talked about that a little bit before, that the heights of many of these buildings are, just about all of them are over 200 square feet, and the majority of them are over 300 square feet. We are proposing a building of 192 square feet measured from grade. I'll be able to show that in the elevations. And I will also point out that our sister building, Jones Hall, which has 117 senior housing beds, is at 173 feet. Now, what that looks like in terms of the proposed is something like this, right? So you see to your left, Jones Hall, you see immediately to the right of that, our building, and then you see the substantially taller buildings of the Beacon complex behind. And I drew a quick line here at 110 feet, which would be what would be permitted in the R4 district, which would be a squat building that, in our opinion, is not proportionate or harmonious with what is proposed. I'm going to show one plan. This is the plan I'm going to show. This is the plan of the 15th through 17th floor, and I'm showing that to you because we've actually set back the building here an additional 7 feet 10 inches, almost 8 feet. And that was per discussion with the historic preservation officer, Mr. Reedon. And what that does is it actually makes the building a little bit more proportionate. Now, the board knows, symmetrical. The board knows that we've gone through many iterations on this building since we started designing it. What you see here are the rendered views that were originally presented to the board on January 31st, 2022, and they will be followed now with views of the current proposal. And so if you, I'm going to just go back and forth so you can see these in context, and you'll see what we've largely done is reimagined the center portion, the main body of the building, and have taken steps to articulate brick further, as well as align the windows so there's vertical stacking to celebrate the verticality of this proposed building. I'll show you a series of side-by-side elevations now. So what you'll see is on the left in each of these next 4 or 5 slides. On the left is the instance shown to the board on January 31st, 2022. And what we see on the right is what we're proposing today. What you'll find here is that the windows and glazing systems have all been set back further to create more layering, cast more shadows, which makes this more consistent with, we think, the historic integrity of the beacon. The proportion of openings to solid portions of the building have also made more consistent with those structures of the old medical center. And details that I'll show you have been further developed with HPC staff in terms of the brick. So what you see here is the Montgomery Street elevation, and I'm going to break down this elevation a little bit, but largely you see that the middle portion of the building, and I'm circling with my mouse, has really been made more vertical. And what you'll find in the details that I show you, the horizontal plan cuts, is that the brick ornament is at its most specific in the center, and then it kind of fades out to something that's more flat towards the sides. And that thinking carries around. So this is the west elevation facing Beacon Way. And again, you see that strong verticality that is being promoted in the center of the building. That follows around to the south facing portion of the building. And here you see again that strong verticality and the eastern portion of the building. Now, the eastern portion of the building is significant because you can see, and I'm circling this, that the building originally ran straight up from the 4th floor to the 17th, and we've set that portion back that I'm circling with the mouse now, almost 8 feet, 7 feet, 10 inches to make the building a little bit more proportional. Now, the materials that we're using have not changed. They've just been further developed in terms of details. So we do have a series of dark bronze metal panel at the base of the building. That's here. We have a dolomite gray brick with iron spot and gray mortar. Now, that is really a tan brick that matches the beacon, but that's the color. Dolomite gray is the color of this particular brick that we're using. There is a light cream cast stone that is being applied to the base of the building and in earnest in some places on top. The windows are all framed in black aluminum, and that black aluminum mullion is thickened to really also kind of portray the verticality a little bit more. Again, something that was worked out with HPC staff in several of the design meetings that we've had since last being before this board. And then we have at the base a kind of Bentheim striated frit glass, which also is almost like a vertical kind of corduroy. So everything that we're doing here is celebrating the kind of verticality we feel of the building, and that carries around. I'll just show you these elevations again, we spoke about. Now, in terms of the elevations themselves, this is a rendering that was developed in the last year. We really did focus on 3 portions of the building: the base of the building, which I've spoken about, the center of the building, the main body of the building, which is now very vertical. There's no more stagger pattern of the windows. And then the ornamental top, which includes some cast stone and bas relief. I have elevation details of that were also shown to the board that have been updated now. And what you can see as I go through at the base, we have a series of decorative metal panel, and then the brick and that fritted glass all propose a vertical kind of movement while still squarely notating the entry to the building, the residential entry, as well as the healthcare or medical entry, which is actually at the corner. But it is the residential entry that is centered and focused as the previous medical center buildings have been adaptively reused. Now, in the middle of the building, I've talked about, and you can really see here the kind of shadow casting that I think the added depth of the windows allow for. You also see here shadow casting in terms of the brick detailing that again is at its most intense in the center and then fades out gradually to less intense and more almost like kind of a flat panel that we get in the rear. And you begin to see some of the ornamental detailing of the cast stone that begins to be used in earnest as we transition to the top of the building, where that cast stone and that vertically oriented brick detailing really kind of cap the building in, we feel, an appropriate way. Elevations of that glass frit pattern. And now these are revised panels that we've shown. And I think the board can actually see, if you look, that we're really looking to vary the brick masonry in the way it's placed to create a series of layers that really give some nice depth and shadow casting to the building facade, which also is consistent with what we've seen next door. Some more examples of that. And then you see, now these are portions of the building where we're kind of fanning out towards the sides. So we are getting from less and less down to a kind of fairly flat panel with a small amount of articulation. And then you see some facade details here in terms of how we are actually mating that brick to the facade. And then this is a little 3D cutaway where you begin to see the various widths and depths of brick that we use. And again, that is per those horizontal sections that we provided. Again, the bas-relief panels, that Bridget bas-relief is spelled here, actually, if you have that question. That we've shown before, these have not changed. And then some of the metal screening details, again, in the spirit, I think, of the medical center. And then a brick edge detail, which we were asked to develop by Mr. Reedon. This was shared with him. And really what we have is a kind of chamfer pattern, which is actually quite nice. And that chamfer pattern, instead of the brick meeting at a point, is actually recessed 3/4 of an inch. So even the corners where the brick actually comes together will cast a shadow. Now, one of the other drawings that we've added is this section axonometric, and this really shows the levels of parking that are below grade. This is the Montgomery Street entrance. You see that entry, and I'll show you that in renderings in a second. That middle portion of the building, which has been reconfigured to really express verticality, as well as that top portion of the building, which is set back and made more symmetrical. Now, I will conclude with just a series of views. These are views that were shown back in January on the 31st of 2022. And these were requested by the HPO. This is the view from Summit and Fairmount. We cannot see our building. The building is outlined in white here. This is the view from Montgomery and Baldwin, where you see our building sitting back here on the left. This is a view from Johnston and Grand. And again, you can see our building here articulated next to our sister building, Jones Hall. From this vantage, they look to be about the same size, the same height. We are slightly up the hill, as you know. And then Montgomery and Marcellus, looking down past the larger, taller structures of the beacon. Our building is here. And then finally, the view from Montgomery and Bergen. So this is up the hill looking east toward Manhattan, and you see our building in the rear of the projection. Speaking of projections, very quickly, shadow studies we were asked to produce. We did. I'm very happy to report that on the most intensive shadow casting times of year, well, the most intensive shadow casting time of year is December, where everything is in shadow because the old medical center buildings actually are taller and cast shadows over our site and everything across the street. But what you see on the left are the the spring and autumn solstices, which show that the majority of shadow casting from both Jones Hall, our sister building, and our building is being cast onto Mill Road. So they are not cast onto any privately owned sites. We're happy about that. And then you see in the center the summer solstice. And that is when the sun is very high in the sky, so the shadows are not very deep, and we're really not even crossing Montgomery Street in terms of the shadows that we're casting there. So we are very confident that we are not casting shadows on any buildings. In fact, we are also very confident that the old medical center buildings that are some 100 feet taller than ours are actually casting shadow on us. We do not have a problem with that, for the record. Finally, just some views of the base of our building, which we think is very nicely articulated, where you really see how we are projecting forth that entry sequence before we terminate into the verticality of the center portion of the building. And I will just conclude with 2 more rendered views that you've seen already. So hopefully that captures, as briefly as I can be, Mr. Reedon, the changes that we've made to the exterior of the building. And certainly I have some of the other slides from the original presentation, should the board have any questions or want me to go back to anything that I said back in January 2022. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from any commissioners for Mr. Garber?
I have a question. What is the distance between Jones Hall and this new building?
Between Jones Hall and the new building, sure. I'm just going to, I have this all noted, and it hasn't changed, Paul, just so you know, but I'm going to put up a site plan, which I had hidden previously, just to kind of show you that dimension. A second. Hold on, please. Okay, so now you can see here. So we have a distance of 12. Let me just zoom into this so I can give you the exact distance size. Excuse me. Sorry, trying to zoom into this thing. And
Yeah, I think you lost him.
So you could see it. Slides. So you can see here on the corner that the predominant distance is 18 feet 2 inches. And when I zoom out, you'll see exactly where that is. And sorry, it took me a second. I just wanted to show you because we obviously have that information. So that distance is here. This is Jones Hall. This is our site plan. And this is the total distance between the buildings.
So the reason I'm asking is because with the new building, I noticed that the corners of the building are full ceiling to floor glass.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I were to living in this new building, if I'd want a ceiling to floor glass apartment only 18 feet away from people's windows. It seems awfully close to have full fishbowl, you know, full glass corner apartments that are just, in my opinion, way too close to the neighboring windows. I can appreciate the new verticality of the building that you've done. It's definitely more pleasing to the eye. and flows much better. But the glass corners, I have an issue with being so close to the neighbors.
So are you saying the corner or the actual portion of the facade? Because you said two, I just want to make sure that I understand you. You're saying.
Yeah, I mean, if you're in the new building and you're in one of those corner apartments, you basically have somebody's window 18 feet away from you and you're basically open. You have a full glass apartment. So to me, it's a little bit close.
Yeah.
Now, if the building was standing there alone and the beacon were as far away as it is, I wouldn't feel so unsettled about it.
Mhm.
I just think that the proximity to Jones Hall is so close to be having all of this glass. And then as far as your shadowing remarks, how does this building not create a shadow on Jones Hall? I'm just not quite sure.
Because Jones Hall.
Yeah, all the west facing windows on Jones Hall are completely, basically blocked in.
Nope.
You have a wall 18 feet away.
Let me try to explain that to you. So first of all, what I will say is that we've looked at the proximity to Jones Hall, and this has been something that the board has stated before. We do believe that the building is proportionately sited well. There are window treatments that can be dealt with to address sightliness. There are ways that we can potentially treat the glass of glass that faces directly to that building. But I do take your point. I mean, I think we're in, soon to be the largest city in New Jersey, and I think that there are buildings that are close to other buildings. My client, I should say, owns the building next door to us, which will remain, as I said before, the 117 beds. So I have no problem taking that into consideration and thinking about potential window treatments or ways of treating that glass.
Yeah, I just think it lacks privacy, all the way around.
Yeah, no, I think, I don't know if I agree with that. I do think that it's also, I'm not sure how pertinent it is here, but I'm happy to have that discussion further with you. I mean, I think that, as I said, there's ways that people can provide shading or if needed, additional window treatments. That's not uncommon in our worlds, I think. In terms of the shadow casting, if you look at the shadow projections, which I have up right now, you have to understand that Montgomery Street is largely an east-west road, as I also know you know, but it is kinked slightly so that it faces north and west. And the sun moves through the sky, as everyone knows. I'm not telling anyone anything special here, from east to west. What you see here is the most extreme projection of the day, which is generally sometime around 2 or 3 p.m., depending on the time of season, right? And you can basically see by the articulation of the tops of the buildings where the shadows are going, right? So in the worst case, on the equinoxes, the equinoxes, you can see that our buildings are both next to one another and casting shadows onto Mill Road. Okay. In the worst case scenario of the year, which is 3 p.m. on December 21st, which is over to the right, everything's in shadow. And that's because the buildings that are directly south of us are actually casting shadow on our buildings. And again, we don't have a problem with that. It is what it is. And then what you see on June 21st, which is the summer solstice at 3 p.m. So this is the most intense time of day at 3 p.m. You do see that the sun is casting a shadow that is slightly more tight, slightly more angled to Montgomery Street as opposed to Mill. But we are largely missing Jones Hall. And so we're not in any way, in any significant way, I should say, and these shadow studies are absolute things. They're not subjective, as you know. Casting any kind of shadow that is really kind of precluding the sunlight that Jones Hall receives right now.
Okay, do any other commissioners have any other questions?
I have a quick question. Is there any exterior lighting proposed for your building?
There is at the ground floor, and that is on, I'm going to have to unhide another slide. The civil engineering drawings actually are generally what we use to show that. Excuse me one second, and you'll see it. I just have a civil site plan, but really what we're proposing here is some what's called down and up lighting. So light that casts up and down only at the base of the building. And that is articulated in the civil set. I don't know if it's actually on the drawings that are here, but I will unhide this slide for you. Open this. So largely the idea is that there'll be some modest lighting that does not project out from the building, but is just cast up and primarily down vertically, that is around the base of the building. And being that I do have the site plan up, I will remind the commissioners that there is a fairly wide terrace that ranges from about 12 feet on the eastern side of the building to about 20 feet around the rest of the building.
This is Commissioner Gucciardo. Could you explain, please, to me what the size of the building would be, both in its footprint and its height, if you were not asking for variances on the site?
Right. So the variances, just so everyone knows, is a matter for the Board of Adjustment, right? And this is a recommendation to the Board of Adjustment. And I'm glad you asked that question. The footprint of the building, and I can confirm this, is approximately what we have here. And I'm going to just confirm that by looking at a slide because I want to be precise here. The coverage that we are permitted is 85%, and it looks like we are at about, 75%. So there is not a coverage issue, I think, in our building.
So just to be clear, that means that the footprint of this building is meeting the lot's requirements.
It's an odd shaped lot.
Mm-hmm.
So there are, yeah, I mean, so there are, I can.
I see. So because it's a zigzag, the lot coverage may look like it's tight on the portion of the lot that the building is on, but there is this other open space where the park is that is making it fall within the guidelines of zoning as of right.
That's correct in terms of coverage. And
Okay.
and so it's not making it. I mean, it is within the guidelines.
Is that lot coverage or is that building coverage?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand that, Brian.
I'm sorry, is that lot coverage or building coverage, Rich?
I'm going to go through. I thought not to go through the deviations, but I might as well go through the deviations for everyone. Let me just do that. I just have to unhide a couple of slides because I want to make sure that I get this right. And this is stuff that was previously presented. There's been no change to anything that I'm about to tell you. This is the same information that came last time. So we do have a deviation of lot area, and that has to do with the size permitted for the R4 zone. The R4 zone is a fairly old zone that was really designed for towers with a sea of parking around us, the kinds of buildings that were built here.
So,
In the,
so-
let me, if I may just finish.
sure.
That were done in the 70s and 80s. So there's a lot area variance that is being requested. There are lot widths that are being requested that have to do with the proportion and size of the lot. And then there are variances required for setbacks at the lower levels, because we are full lot at the levels below ground. And then at the side yards as well, for the same reason. And then you see that the building height, which I will show again in my slide, is about, it's a little bit less than 190, it's 97 feet higher. But our density is not, and I want to reiterate that since I'm going through this. So the amount of density that we are permitted in this building is 98 units. That's what we are proposing. So largely the height difference from what is permitted in the R4 is because of the medical use that we are proposing, right? There's 3 stories of medical use as well as the underground parking. And I will go now to the building slide that shows our building in the context. And I showed this before, that red line that I put up there is the 110 feet. And so I do think that should we try to do, and you know, we have tried this, we've looked at these options with internally with the client as well as I believe with staff, and think that a building at 110 feet is completely mismatched proportionately, especially since we have Jones Hall to our east. So that will be relief that we will be asking the board for.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. The reason why I'm bringing up the variances is because from a historic preservation guideline point of view, the variances, in my opinion, are exacerbating the concerns that we are and the guidelines that we're trying to pay attention to and be respectful about. And I'll explain. You know, one of the guidelines that we go by is whether the new construction is dominating in the setting or is secondary. And the height of the building certainly creates this as a very prominent building that also blocks out Jones Hall from certain views. And it frankly looks to me overwhelming to the site. By asking for variance on setbacks and side yards and width and area, it further puts a lot of burden on the Historic Preservation Commission, because it's creating a situation that basically goes against the guidelines that we're trying to maintain.
So, Commissioner, I'm glad you brought that up. And I will now go into, I think I should probably reiterate some of the design standards that we very, very carefully followed. And these are
if you don't mind, before you do that, you know, there's obviously been a lot of work done on the design, the facades, the materials, the treatments, the rhythms. I very much appreciate all that. It's certainly a much better building that was presented before, but I don't want that to overshadow the context of the building that's been created by the subdivision and by all the variances. I think that's what's causing some of the biggest problems for me in viewing this, because just on the although it may seem more relevant height-wise to the other buildings, it also becomes one of the more prominent buildings in the complex. And I really believe that it should be a secondary building.
Yep.
And sticking to the height allowed would certainly go a long way to have it be a secondary building, even if it doesn't achieve some of the verticality that you've achieved.
And I can appreciate that. And again, I just, for the record, I am presenting a building based on the historic design standards set forth by the Secretary of the Interior, not by the Zoning Board of Adjustment or the Land Development Ordinance, right? So what we're talking about here is appropriateness based on historic design standards. And I will read to you very specifically the historic design standards set forth by the Secretary of the Interior with respect to building height, if I may. Height shall be visually compatible with the adjacent buildings. The apparent physical size, scale, and height shall relate to existing resources. And we've written as a response that you can see here, the proposed building massing maintains the progression in height from Jones Hall to the main buildings of the Beacon or Medical Center complex at the top of the slope being Montgomery Street. The primary facade is 14 stories, is designed to be similar in scale to the Jones Hall building, and the building massing is set back at the 15th floor to create a shape similar in shape and scale to the surrounding Beacon buildings, meaning it has a kind of wedding cake telescoping, right? And this is the same graphic that I showed before, showing that there is a progression or a step up to the taller heights of the primary medical center buildings, which are, as I've said before, over 100 feet taller than we are. Okay, so now I'm going to ask you to just remember this visual of this slide, and I'm going to go all the way back to the slide that I put up again just before, and I'm going to reiterate here that being that we are part of a progression of buildings, that the stepping of the height and the height that we're proposing of about 202 feet from the average grade is actually appropriate given the stepping up. I think sinking down to go back up actually is quite unharmonious, and I think not consistent with the design standards set forth by the Secretary of the Interior.
I respectfully disagree.
I have a couple questions, I think, and yeah, I'll maybe jump right off Stephen Gucciardo's question. And I think that in this case, in this complex, when thinking about this as an entire complex, I think a building of this height is appropriate and can be appropriate. However, I think there's a couple different ways that you can go about doing that. And I think the height may be appropriate, but I think there might be some other things that could make this more appropriate. A couple things, and maybe you can bring up the full, there's a full site plan of the entire medical center complex. And I think it's something that I've been struggling about. And this is one that I've been kind of thinking about since it came to us about a year ago. Is the thing that I really struggle with. And to be clear, I don't have any issue with, one, the subdivision, and two, new construction on this site. But I think a couple things that are a struggle for me are the more square nature of the building as compared to the more rectangular shapes of the buildings that are historically present on the site. So I think that's one way that a building of, at this site could better relate to the rest of the site. Having more of a bar or rectangular footprint could help it blend in better. And number two, the other thing for me is still, I think the building is greatly improved, and it's clear that you've done a lot of work, and I think this is greatly improved, but I still agree with the corners being very glassy. And I know why you're doing that for the units, but I still think that having a strong masonry corner on the building, and I think maybe you didn't talk about it, but there does look like there's some new detail that you added in corners, and maybe you can talk about that. I think it's some sort of brick. I still don't know that it necessarily goes far enough. Because when looking at these buildings and this complex as a whole, you really get the sense of punched windows within masonry openings. And while you've gone towards that, I still don't know if it's done enough to go towards that.
Sure.
I think for me, those are the kind of the two things, both the footprint of the proposed building and how you treat the corners of the building. And I think strengthening that would strengthen its relationship to the rest of the complex. So I'll allow you to respond to that, Rich.
Sure. And we've talked about this a little bit before. I think there are some circumstances of the site proportions that have led us to the siting that we have studied.
I'm sorry, I have to interrupt. Dan, do you think you can shut your mic off? There's a lot of static coming from you.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
that's okay, not a problem.
Thank you.
Rich, you were saying, I think there are some circumstances of the site proportions that have led us to the siting.
Yes, and you can see them here where, Jones Hall itself, Mr. Blazak, as you can see, it's a bar, but it's a compressed bar. And so even the footprint here, because this is on the corner, if you look at the dental college or the tops of, say, medical buildings A or C, which are some of the tallest buildings here, these are more slender, but they also are in a larger, kind of more wide open site. Jones Hall itself on the corner begins adapting to the urban condition of corner, as opposed to what was the urban condition of field in the sort of heart of the medical center. And so I recognize that point, and I do think it's a good point. But I do think that the circumstances of the site and the precedent of Jones Hall itself actually speak to a little bit of a different kind of articulation at that corner. We have tried to articulate the top of the building and set back that rear of the top of the building by that 7 feet 10 inches to try to slender the building up at least at the top. Now, in terms of the let me just jump ahead to some of the detailing to talk about the corners a little bit more. What you see here is the mullion systems of the building, and then at the corners themselves. And so the mullion systems have actually been made slightly more proud, so that the glass recedes a little bit more. The glass is pushed back in general in the facade to create a little bit more of a shadow line. And what that also does is, while still allowing the verticality to, I think, be prime, there are a series of horizontals that are casting shadows, particularly at the corners where we have the double width of glazing, that I think are helping to heavy up, I guess is, for lack of a better phrase, some of the windows. I'll also remind, and I know many on the board know this, that punched windows and the size of those windows actually have as much to do with the construction technology of the time than they do the sort of stylistic period that the buildings are a part of. And I do think that for a new building to mimic these smaller punched openings, first of all, I think would detract from the amount of light and air that I think these units should and could have, one. And two, we don't really need to build that way anymore. We're still trying to be, acknowledge the significance of these buildings. So I do think, I'd be happy to talk a little bit more with you about the corners. I've heard your points. I think your points are always great. But what we see here is some of the changes that we've made with respect to staff comments and concerns of the board from last January, 2 Januaries ago, excuse me.
Are there any other questions from any commissioners?
Yeah, I had a couple questions for Rich. In my opinion, and this was the same in the last iteration, it still encroaches on Jones Hall and the dental college. I think the design is significantly improved from first iteration that we saw. But my concern is a building of this size to be only 18 feet away is just too close. I look at our standards 345-71 H2E. Standard E is it talks about the space between historic structures, and I think you're encroaching on this historic structure, and I think it sets a bad precedent for other historic structures with large lots. I think the way you have a zigzag lot that you're asking us to approve in order to get the density that you need and want for this building. I think if you just made the building smaller with the same design and allowed it to respect Jones Hall and the dental college, I think it would go a lot further for me to be able to say, hey, I think this does, doesn't encroach. But for me right now, 18 feet is just too close. I see that the Jones Hall facade that faces the proposed new building I see that as a primary facade. It's on the primary entrance to the site. And not only that, I could see, 5 years from now, proposed buildings on the other side of that primary entrance, multiple proposed buildings all the way up Montgomery, with this being precedent.
So
I just think the building is too close and too large.
So if I may understand that, Mr. Sandekamp, and I always appreciate your comments. So the primary facade on Jones Hall is not the western facing facade. Is that what you're suggesting? Or
No, I'm suggesting that there are more than one primary facade to this building because it has a lot of space around it. It had lawns around it, as do multiple buildings at the Beacon. I believe that facade, I would consider that to be, while it's a secondary facade, it's much more primary than any other secondary facade. It's not just some side wall of a lot that's expecting another building to go next to it. It is primary. This building is meant to be seen from multiple sides. It's meant to be, it's meant to have light and air around it. And I just, in my opinion, our standards that apply to the space around buildings, that paradigm, I think it tells us that this building is too close.
and out of curiosity, what would you suggest the setback or the spacing between the buildings should be? Because this is also governed by code, but I'd be interested in hearing that, and we potentially could take that under consideration.
Well, I mean, if you think of, for instance, the courthouse, the Brennan Courthouse, if you were going to put a building next to the Brennan Courthouse, how far away would you put it? And they did it. They put that mid-century building adjacent to the Brennan Courthouse, but they still left space around it. And they respected the Brennan Courthouse, I think, significantly more than this is respecting Jones Hall. It's also incredibly close to the dental college, and it's shadowing the dental college. Whether you want to call it a shadow, a sun shadow, it's very close to both of those buildings, and to me, it's just too close.
Well, it's okay. So I just for the record, I want to just, we it is definitely not casting shadows on the dental college, and I just want to be clear about that. It's the dental college is to the south of us, so the dental college is actually casting shadows on us. But I understand what you're saying, and
Well, the dental college is what, 40 feet, 50 feet? You're 100 and what, 150?
the dental college is 120 feet,
Okay, and what are you?
202.
Okay, so you're 80 feet above it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, that's proposed, yeah, yeah. But the dental college has frontage on, the dental college has a little bit of a different setup, as you know. I mean, the dental college largely has its long facades, and I would say the long facades are the primary facades, actually on Corneliuson and then facing the Beacon context at this drop, right? So there's not a lawn, by the way, also next to us. There's a pit, right? And there's a tiny bridge that currently exists that connects Jones Hall to a small garden in the middle of this pit, which drops about 30 feet, right? And that's why we're actually proposing filling this with parking, because there's, you know, it's subterranean in effect, right? The dental college faces Corneliuson and then faces the remainder of that drop off that climbs back up to Beacon Way, right? Because there's a fairly steep topography that exists here. So I would say that, sure, I mean, we are close to the north facing facade of the dental college, and, you know, we've always been. And that's something that, you know, and I recognize that the board is uncomfortable with these kinds of proximities. I do have some photos I can show you here again. But you know, I do feel like the setup of the dental college is largely facing east-west. I would say that Jones Hall, while it does have windows that do face west, we know that, it's largely articulated with its entry at on Montgomery Street, so facing north-south. And so what we've tried to do is, you know, this is a development lot that we could that we've really looked at, and I do feel that the proportions, while I understand that they are the proximity of the proposed building in a few instances is a proximity that the board is uncomfortable with. I do think we're able to mitigate these kinds of things, and I think we've tried to design a building that, you know, taking those constraints, you know, seeks to mitigate them. So, but I understand.
I mean, look, the buildings that are there that this building is, in my opinion, encroaching on are historic structures, part of one of the largest historic redevelopments in US history. And they're significant structures. This building is at this point theoretical. It's just a drawing. So you're saying we are? No, you are not yet. You are a drawing. And I appreciate it because I think this building is a very nice building. I like the building. I just don't think that particular spot where you're trying to squeeze that building in I think it's not appropriate.
Right.
And I think our design standard 34571 H2E calls that out. And my concern is if we were to permit this, the rest of those lawns would be filled with buildings.
But these
might be Rich, it might be Grow Architects putting those buildings over there, working with the Beacon.
I don't know about that, but you know,
it might be, but it might be another architect, but this would be precedent, this building. And I'd also worry about the Brennan Courthouse. And I worry about a lot of Victorians in parts of Jersey City that have 200-foot lots. And someone makes a Z-shaped lot and asks for it to be a separated lot. You know, you're saying it's a development site. Well, no, it's part of the lot that Jones Hall is on. You know, and I understand that, you know, but right now it's part of an incredible redevelopment site that's, I think, you know, I just don't think it's appropriate. I think it's too tight for me. And, you know, I like I said, I like the design of the building. If you put it in a vacant lot across the street, it'd be fantastic.
Right. Well, so let me just speak to the setting the precedent, because I do think that that's a fair point that I'd like to address. So, and again, sometimes we have these irregular sites, and I would say that Jones Hall, when the owner came to us, it is an underdeveloped lot per the land development ordinance, right? It is not maxed out, and that's where the subdivision is coming from. In terms of the filling in of the rest of this, so this is the Beacon lawn. This is privately owned by the Beacon. There will be probably some public comment that suggests that the building is going here. We are not putting the building on the great lawn of the Beacon. That's something that we've addressed before. I don't think that that's going anywhere. I think that the context, once you cross Baldwin and certainly across Montgomery Street, especially as you get to the west, the scale changes considerably. And then the housing authority owns the sites down to the east of us. So I can understand precedent, and I can understand a little bit of a reluctance to set it, but this is really the only development site, proper development site, that I think there is between portions further east of Montgomery Street and all the way up at least to Baldwin, if not before. I know that further up past Baldwin, there are some larger structures, but so I recognize that, and that's something that we have tried to take into consideration. But it's a fair point.
Richard, I have a question for you. Why is it then, if you feel, why isn't the building being put on the Cornelius Avenue portion of the lot instead of being jammed next to Jones Hall and right at the edge of Beacon Way? If the lot is subdividable and not being utilized according to the land development plan, then why aren't we putting the building on Cornelius Avenue and leaving that big open corner so that Jones Hall is not being as affected?
I think it's very clear from this graphic that I have up, Mr. Amatuzzo, and that's simply that the proportion of the site suggests that the larger portion of the site is where we're trying to put the building. The parking lot that you see there, which as you know, we've proposed, this is theoretical. We've proposed at this point, but it's been theoretical for a fairly long time now. We've proposed a park, 5,600 square foot park, 5,600 square feet, especially in the footprint standard set forth by the medical center, is a very small building, smaller than anything that's there. So we feel that the footprint that is allotted to the west of Jones Hall is more appropriate, the more appropriate portion of the development site for building. I also believe that Montgomery, I've lived on Montgomery Street for years. Montgomery Street is one of the major east-west corridors in the city. And I do think that Cornelius is not. So I think there's a lot of reasons urbanistically and also size and proportion that would dictate that the Montgomery Street portion of the site is more appropriate for building.
I think Tony made some good points, especially in relation to, primary facades, and which I haven't really thought about this, but I don't know if there is any non-primary facades in this entire complex, because each facade on Jones Hall, and I think it's true throughout the entire complex, each facade has the same level of design. There really are no secondary facades on this entire complex, which I think is quite interesting. But something that might be interesting exercise is on the southern portion of the site, there are some buildings which appear like they're closer together, and they're actually the buildings that are not shown in this aerial. It would be down there below where your cursor is. So I'm not sure how, it looks like they are closer together. It might be interesting to know how far those buildings are apart from one another. And also, those buildings utilize setbacks and have, some different setbacks at different floors as they get higher, but it might be helpful for us to know what the setbacks are on different parts of the site between different buildings.
Yeah, and I think what I'm happy to do that, and you could see, and again, I know that in the Noli or figure ground that we have here, there's different heights, and that's why we try to show that with tones of gray. But we can get those dimensions. For sure, we can get those dimensions, and I think that you will see that we do have some proximities that are tight, and I think I'd like the opportunity to kind of understand what those are metrically and share them with you for sure.
All right, do we have any other questions from any commissioners at this time?
Stephen, if you're talking, you have to unmute yourself.
My apologies. Richard, what is your opinion about the effect of this building on the view corridors that make the medical center such an important part of the Jersey City skyline?
Yeah, thank you for that. I think we've considered that. I'm just trying to go to the slide that shows. So one of the view corridors that is critical is the turnpike, right? The turnpike is the view corridor that when you're driving past, sort of 14B, which is where I am right now, all the way down to the Holland Tunnel exit, you really do see these buildings prominently, and you see them along this sort of facade, right? So largely that frontage of building is not really being changed by our building. Now, what you do see is this kind of, if you can see where my mouse is, this rear kind of corner of the building. If you were driving, into Manhattan and looking left, or driving out of Manhattan looking right, and if you were looking right, I guess you'd have the clearer view. You'd actually see our building here, but our building is certainly not blocking any of the structures, and we were very careful about that. And that's when Mr. Reedon actually gave us, and I'll go to the slide. So that's the turnpike. That's the turnpike answer. But Mr. Reedon, some time ago, when we really started getting into this and having these kind of design iteration meetings, he asked for some very, very, what I thought at the time, peculiar advantages. And, he had really thought about these things, and I, give him a lot of credit for that, where the main views of the medical center from a series of vantage points. Now, I showed these to the board already, but maybe I didn't go long enough on this map. So
could you show one in particular for me, please? And that would be Montgomery Street looking east. And I ask for that one in particular because, in my opinion, Jones Hall kind of gets hidden by this building and separated from the complex.
So
visually separated from the complex.
So 100%. And again, we're not buildings. We're not suggesting our building is transparent in any way or something here, right?
Of course not.
So from the Montgomery corridor looking east is going to be, so this is Fairmont. So this is the view from Montgomery and Baldwin, where our building is certainly west of Jones Hall. And it is from this vantage point, it is in front of Jones Hall. We see that. Mm-hmm. I think in the majority of other views, you see we are adjacent to Jones Hall, right? So we're trying to be very cognizant of that. The view from Marcellus, Jones Hall, is actually what's proud of our.
Let's see.
So you see it here. And then again, from further back on Bergen, so this is a view that we showed before, that you do see that we are in front of Jones Hall. So it's really only on that Montgomery corridor when you're looking in these views. And this is one of the reasons why I think we're showing these views, because I think it's important to kind of understand this. So it is from the views looking east on Montgomery Street toward Manhattan that you will notice our building is west of, in front of Jones Hall. I think from the other views that I've shown, you know, the impact of our building is, you know, is not so significant. And I do believe that, you know, when you look at these things and look at the material palette, sure, it does look a little bit different. And that's some of the idea, but we do hope that it's become more appropriate in terms of its material sensibility and proportions. Just go back to that aerial view.
All right, are there any other questions from commissioners?
All right, I hear none. We've kind of gone, I think, pretty extensive on this. Bridget, would you like a break before we move into some public comment?
Yes.
Okay, we can, well, let's take a 5-minute break. And then we can close out any remaining testimony or questions that pop up during the break and move to public comment, okay?
Okay, so it's 8:11. So we'll take a 5-minute break and return at 8:16. If everyone can mute themselves, turn off your cameras, and just turn your camera on when we're back so we know to restart. Thank you.
All right, looks like we're all back.
All right, it's 8:17. We'll come back from our recess.
Okay.
Go ahead. I think we were just finishing questions. Jennifer, Rich, if you wanted to add anything else.
Yeah, so Richard, you can go ahead. We had some further discussions during the break, just with respect to some of the feedback that we received from the commission. And so I'll leave it to you, Richard, to speak with the commission further about what we ultimately decided based on the further feedback we received.
Sure. And look, we recognize that this project is, you know, it's a very meaningful project, and we very much have enjoyed the conversations that we've had. I think that particularly Commissioner Sandekamp's comments and Commissioner Amatuzzo's comments, and Brian, of course, Commissioner Blazek's comments, I think that we would be willing to look at some potential additional revisions, look at these dimensions that I told the board I'd like to look at and get you, because I don't know them off the top of my head. If we were to carry this, come back, hopefully relatively soon. We certainly don't want to wait 14 months. I can't believe it's been that long. But you know, we're here to work with you guys, and you know, and that's the point. And I recognize also in saying that we're probably not going to make everyone happy, but I think we can probably get closer to some level where everyone is comfortable, and we'd like to try to do that.
Okay.
Yes, staff feels very comfortable working with the applicant, the architect, the developer on this. You know, as was mentioned before, the building has moved towards being more appropriate and fitting in with its surroundings more. I think that there may be some room, given the commissioner's comments, to improve the building so that there is less of a impact on the site, and you can more respectfully integrate the building into the complex as a whole. So I'm more than happy to to further discuss that with you.
Okay, are we still going to take public comment tonight?
I think, given the feedback that the commission has already given and the fact that we still do have public comment open. We never really closed it, from what I recall. I think it's up to the commission, but I think that there's more than enough to work with from what the commission brought up. I think they've reiterated comments that have been made in the past. I think the applicant, the architect, the commission, they're beginning to come to a better mutual understanding of what may be appropriate on the site.
Okay, does any comments from any other commissioners? I mean, certainly if they come back with revisions, there will certainly be public comment at that point.
Yes.
Does anyone have any strong opinion on tonight?
I have one comment. I'm just concerned that there may be some public comment that would also alter or change the design of the building that we as commissioners have yet to pick up on. So I'm a little concerned that there are some people from the public out there who have picked up on something that we have not. And then next time around, we're going to be back to the drawing board again, because there's going to be, I could see that there's a huge number of people from the public on here. So I think it might be worth, in our best interest, to save time in the long run, to hear some comments, as long as they're not continually duplicating each other. It may help everyone, the architect and everyone else, at the end of the day.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's a good.
Fair.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's in the applicant's best interest as well.
Absolutely.
I would agree as well.
Okay, so we will move to public comment then. As a reminder, you can raise your hand or utilize the *9, *6.
Yes,
What is it?
*9.
What is our limit again? We have 5 minutes.
No,
Based on the bylaws.
you can use the raise hand. I'm sorry, Jonathan.
I was going to speak to the length of public comment. The
Oh, yeah, go
bylaws say at the chair's behest, you can shorten it to 3 minutes.
Okay. I think that'll be appropriate for tonight. Limited to 3 minutes. Your questions are directed at the commissioners. There's no cross discussion with the applicants, and myself and Maggie, we can take notes and write them down. And, if the applicants wish to answer any questions now, they can, or they can, take that into consideration for the next time. Just another reminder that this is the Historic Preservation Commission. Comments should be, related to the purview of the commission. Quality of life issues like traffic, dog runs, etc. That's the purview of the zoning board. see if you can keep it to matters of our purview.
Great, thanks, Brian. All right, so like everyone said, we see 5 hands raised. I will call your name and we'll promote you. You have to accept the invitation to be a panelist in order to be promoted. Once you're promoted, you'll be able to unmute yourself, turn on your camera, we'll swear you in, and I will tell you when your time begins. All right, so any commissioners want to make a motion to open public comment?
Motion.
Reopen public comment.
Sure, yes, reopen public comment.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, first up, we have Bob Stein. All right, Bob, you should be able to unmute yourself and turn on your camera. Great.
And would you raise your right hand to be sworn? Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And could you state and spell your full name?
Sure. Robert Stein, Stein.
Okay, and your 3 minutes begins now.
Good. At the earlier meeting of the HPC, when they discussed this particular issue, there were basically 2 sets of comments. One were about the aesthetic concerns, the design of the building and its appearance from various viewpoints. The other was a whole lot of concerns about such a large building being inappropriate for the historically protected site. And several commissioners, among them Sandcap, Sikong, Blazak, Gunther, and Gucciardo, mentioned those issues. Public comments also mentioned those issues. I was astonished to find that the revisions made by the architect focused entirely on the design of the building. They did make significant improvements there, but they ignored the question of the building being too large for its place. That is the reason why they asked for all those variances, because it's simply too large for the historically protected area. So I was a little bit disappointed that even after asking for extra time so that they could consult with the community, when those things were also stated, they did nothing about any of those, and they're still letting the project go, even though we can see many concerns that actually are not of the nature of in the HPC's purview, but for instance, the lack of parking and the congestion, which I would really like to discuss, and they are a result of trying to do too much on a small site. So I'm disappointed in their response, and I hope that they will respect the commission, not only by lip service, but by, in fact, addressing those issues. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next up, we have Sean Bava.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Sean, are you able? Yeah, there we go.
Okay.
Do you swear to tell the whole truth?
I do. I swear to tell the whole truth.
Thank you.
Can you just state and spell your name for the record, please?
Sure. My name is Sean Bava, Shaun Bava.
All right, your 3 minutes begins now.
So basically, you know, the developer, to basically comment on what Bob Stein just said, came and has come back and, you know, again, hasn't addressed a lot of the concerns of the community. And he, like the Historic Preservation Board keeps speaking about, is saying, you know, this project at this point, there really isn't a lot. he's asking to subdivide. He's asking for variances for many different things, height, setback. You know, basically you're asking the community to give in a lot for a developer's profit. The original purchaser of Jones Hall bought it with a certain use. They knew what it was. So, you know, now we're 40, 50 years later trying to change this. And it's very disrespectful to the historical fabric of the site. You know, from a historic preservation perspective, the beacon was built as a projection of Frank Hague's power in Jersey City. That's why it was built taller than everything around it. It was built around, you know, 3-story homes and small little apartment buildings to show how powerful his administration was. And now to, you know, change the skyline and block the building and block the facade definitely, you know, impacts the historical significance of that site. And from a historical perspective, it really is not, you know, respectful of what is there. There was never intended to be a building there. We were never intended to block Jones Hall. You know, these buildings were intended to tower over what was around them. I mean, that was the intention of the site. That was the setbacks. That was the lawn. It was basically, you know, to project the power of the Hague administration in Jersey City. And I just think, you know, from the perspective of the community and, you know, the Historic Preservation Committee, this is not something that we should get behind. And while I respect that they have made concessions to the exterior of the building to make it more attractive, to make it blend better, I agree with the assessment of the, you know, Historical Preservation Committee that it is not something that belongs on the site. If it were across the street or down the road, you know, great. But I mean, I think as someone who has an interest in the community, that's, you know, my opinion. And I think a lot of my neighbors feel the same way.
Does that conclude your comments?
Yeah, yes, it does.
Great, thank you. All right, next up we have Eugene. I go ahead and promote you.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you, and your full name and spell it for the record.
Eugene Kagansky, E-U-G-E-N-E, Kagansky, K-A-G-A-N-S-K-Y. Just to clarify, you said I cannot speak about the traffic congestion?
No, the Historic Preservation Commission takes testimony regarding the historic preservation elements of the project.
Understood.
So we do ask that you keep your comments towards that and reserve any other comments for quality of life for the zoning board. I'll go ahead and start your timer now.
Yes. So, you know, in the Beacon complex, there is a precedent of the empty lot being unused, and the new building was erected a few years back. And that building is an underground parking garage, which doesn't alter the spirit of the complex. It doesn't alter the cultural thing. It does have slightly new and modern architecture, but it fits in because it is underground garage with a park, with a green park on top. So if the developer of this site feels that their lot is underutilized, a similar concept can be applied, so they can build the underground garage, which all of us at the Beacon will be greatly happy about, because we do have lack of parking, and having an alternative parking would be fantastic. And they would elevate the park, which is currently below, almost below the ground. They will elevate it to the level which is easily accessible from either Jones Hall or from the Beacon. So that's number one. So we should, if we are talking about precedents, so we already have precedent in the Beacon, we should extend this precedent to the other lot as well. Second, the architect made the point that because the Montgomery Street is rising, that the new construction that they are proposing should also rise in height. So that is not entirely true, because the Mercury building, for example, steps down after the after the Rialto and Capitol go up, the Mercury goes down. So there is a precedent that even though street goes up, nothing stops it from the architectural perspective to next building to go down. So that argument that the next building always have to be higher is not an argument. The third point I want to make that in a Rialto Capitol that face Montgomery, not the entire building is of the same height. They're like ladders, they're like stairs. And the height of the building, which is closest to the lawn, to the street, is actually around the same height, maybe 1-2 story above or below of what they allowed currently without changing the zone. With the red line on the picture that they presented. So without doubling the height, they would still fit into the maybe go a little bit lower. They fit into the how the lower level structures of the beacon facing the Montgomery Street are.
Your time is up. Thank you. All right, next up is Matthew. Matthew should be able to unmute yourself and turn on your camera.
Matthew, would you raise your right hand to be sworn? Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you, and state and spell your full name.
Matthew, M-A-T-T-H-E-W, Velardo, V as in Victor, I-L-A-R, D as in David, O.
Great, thank you. Your 3 minutes begins now.
How you doing? So first I'm going to speak to you guys. I'm here representing your councilwoman, Mira Prince Harry. So she can't be here today, and she asked me to make a statement on her behalf. So councilwoman is in support of the Beacon residents' points and concerns about this project. She accepts that the developer has made changes to better reflect the neighborhood's character, but she also believes that the proposed project will affect the light and air between the current buildings and is too big for the footprint. So being that I have time left and being that I swore, now I'm going to speak to you guys as Matthew Velardo, representing myself and a lifelong resident of Jersey City. So I understand that that footprint is 75% of what the footprint is supposed to be. But being that that zigzag is going on, I believe that it's the footprint is that percentage is irrelevant. All that extra zigzag stuff is irrelevant to the building. So my advice, or my opinion is maybe find whatever that footprint is, just the square part where the site is actually going to be built on. And although it's 75% of the square footage right now of the property, I think that should be maybe proposed as, and this is me, maybe 55–60% of just that square site, not minus all that other zigzag stuff. Let's not count that square footage in just where the site is. And maybe if you propose that, maybe that would make a difference. And I only say that because I was listening to Commissioner Sandkamp. I hope I said your name right, Tony. So and he kind of said, shrink down the building. So I agree. I personally agree that's a good idea to start with. And I mean, that's it. I hope you guys understood. Everything was clear. There was no echoing, and have a great day.
Thank you. All right, we have Gerard next.
Hello, my name is Gerard Matera.
To be sworn?
Sure.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I swear.
Thank you. And your full name and spell it, please.
Gerard Matera. My last name, M-A-T-T-E-R-A.
Great, thank you. Your 3 minutes begins now.
So I'm also a local real estate agent, as well as I live at 4 Beacon Way, and I'm also one of the board members of Rialto Capital. And I just want to be clear that we're not opposed to all development even on this site, but we strongly oppose this particular plan that is too big to be compatible with the historical preservation of the site. Strange to say, the developers respond at length and comments and questions from the HBC commissioners about the style of the exterior of the planned building, but they have not responded at all to the comments from those same commissioners, as well as the general public, about the project being so big that it is incompatible with the historic preservation of the site. The pictures that I saw tonight, that had no 360 point of view from the lot. There's nothing straightforward from the lot. It's not showing that the bottleneck lease that's right next to the entrance, that there's only one main entrance inside and outside of the complex. He also mentioned about the views from the turnpike, which are beautiful, I have to admit, especially around Christmas time. But he's also missing the beautiful views that you see from downtown Jersey City, as we know that it's going up on the hill, right? It's named appropriately because it is the beacon of Jersey City. I agree with the commissioners have made. They made the right point. It's squeezing a huge building into a tiny space that overshadows the Art Deco brilliance that makes our city so special. There's nothing like this in Jersey City, and there's nothing like this in this country. And I think that to put an oversized building that has to break all the rules by variances to get what they want is oversight to what's really important, which is Jersey City itself. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next up, we have Yolana. Oh, Yolana, you're
Unmute
muted.
yourself and raise your right hand to be sworn. You swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. State and spell your name.
Before I begin, can I ask to be
Spell your full
sworn?
name, please.
Ulana, Ulana. Last name is Zakalak, Z as in zebra, Akalak. I'm asking if I can be sworn in as an expert witness, since I was the historic preservation consultant for the Beacon for 12 years.
Yes, I think that's fine. Staff notes that Ms. Zakalak has previously been qualified in front of this board as an expert in the field of historic preservation.
Thank you. I just can't finish everything in 3 minutes. And most of my testimony was going to be refuting the supplemental report that was written by the historic preservation consultant for the development team. So I'm glad that I don't have to do that anymore. And I wanted to thank Ms. Porter for stating that Jones Hall is an integral part of the Jersey City Medical Center. It's a contributing building to the Jersey City Medical Center. And for all of you who do not know what its function was, it was built as a residence for the doctors, the resident interns that worked at the medical center. They had a very glamorous existence in the building. They actually had a French chef who cooked all their meals in their private dining room. And they were on the campus all the time, just as the nurses were. But of course, the nurses did not have equal privileges like the men did that lived in Jones Hall. At the time, it was called O'Hanlon Hall. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention, that it was a contributing building to the National Register listing. I worked on this project for 12 years. I started in 2004 and finished in 2016 as the consultant to the largest historic tax credit project in the country. This is what put a lot of Jersey City preservation on the map. And this is a very, very important site. And I want everyone to understand that this site is just so spectacular. It's second only to Rockefeller Center in Jersey City, in New Jersey, in the United States. It's the most cohesive example of Art Deco architecture we have. Of course, it was subdued because it was built during the Great Depression. So we have this style of architecture called WPA Art Deco, and this is a very, very good example of it. And I feel very strongly that this new proposed building is not only out of scale, it's too large, too tall, but it's too glitzy. It takes away from the significant architectural and historical significance of the landmark buildings because it's so decorated. And I feel like it will become the hero, not the Jersey City Medical Center, which is the true hero of Jersey City. And I also wanted to mention that the rest of the buildings have a unified design of building heights, style, and materiality, but there's also something very special about the buildings. And this was touched on by some of the residents that spoke earlier, in particular, Eugene mentioning the fact that when the new parking deck was built, it was built underground. It's built underneath the Palisade promontory that we're situated on. And also the buildings further down the Criterion Hague, half of them are actually below the ridge of the Palisades. So they're approachable from Cornelissen. So they retain their spatial relationship, even though they seem like large squares on the map, because most of the building is actually below the cliff. So I think that that's very important to remember. And I also wanted to bring up that the Secretary of Interior Standards, Standard 9, says that new additions, exterior alterations, or related new construction will not destroy historic materials, features, spaces, and spatial relationships. And Mr. Gucciardi brought this up. This is a very, very important point about the medical center, that all the buildings have space around them. They're all interconnected. I know that Mr. Garber said that only some of them were. They are all interconnected, whether by above ground tunnels, walkways, or below ground. They were all one complex at one point. And of course, the medical center has such prominent siting. It's the greatest visual and historical landmark in Jersey City. It's visible from so many places. It's visible from Brooklyn. It's visible from Bayonne. It's visible from everywhere. And what really caught my mind is the fact that it's a point of orientation for surrounding communities with an incredible iconic skyline that's been there for over 80 years. And as we were looking at the view sheds going east on Montgomery, it completely obliterates the view of Jones Hall. If you were looking straight on, it would obliterate the view of the Orpheum, which was the original surgical building. It completely obliterates the view of the isolation hospital, which people are calling the dental college. So that one construction changes the spatial relationship of 3 historic buildings, not just Jones Hall, but Building D, the surgical building, which is now called the Criterion, and what the developer calls the Roxy, which is the old isolation hospital or the dental college. So please keep that in mind. When you look at that site plan, you see that all those buildings are just squeezed together. And that little park that they're suggesting is actually being placed in front of, halfway in front of the isolation hospital, sort of.
Ilana, kind of wrap it up a bit, please.
Okay, I'm sorry. I just wanted to mention that one of the great books that I had to study in graduate school when I was doing my master's degree in historic preservation is called The Image of the City, written by John Lynch. And he says in this is 1959, he says, "The New Jersey Medical Center is visually unmistakable, rising tall and white from the edge of the cliff, of haphazardly located giant." So here's somebody who wrote a textbook on planning, on large urban design, citing the medical center. So please take that into consideration when you make your decision. The building is too big, too glitzy, too tall, and too massive. Thank you.
Thank you, Lana.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is,
I
I'm
just wanna
sorry,
say
Laura.
really quickly, we can accept, I know we do have time limits, but in advance, if people want to submit written testimony, it can be distributed to us prior to. I know we have our time limits, but that is something that the public can do if not all of your testimony is going to fit into our time frame, and we can review that prior to the hearing next time.
Okay, I'll do that next time. Thank you.
Okay, next up we have Kumi. Again, I apologize if I'm pronouncing anyone's name wrong.
Hello, would you raise your right hand to be sworn? Do you
Hi.
swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. State and spell your full name for the record, please.
My name is Kumarika Banerjee, Kumarika. Last name Banerjee, B as in boy, Anerjee.
Thank you. I'm gonna go ahead and start your time.
Okay, I appreciate the opportunity to speak. I just wanted to bring up a concern that may not be entirely related to the historical preservation, may sort of impinge on zoning a little bit, but I think that it's something that does impose on the character of the campus, the feel and the sort of overall look, and that pertains to the medical use that the developer has proposed. I'm a physician myself, and I work in various medical settings, and so I can speak to this directly. That what they're proposing 3 floors of medical use, and that's a fairly large footprint in the sense, you know, obviously not in the physicality of it, but more in the sense that it's a number of physicians' offices, staff, nursing, and they really haven't accounted for or allotted for an infrastructure, so to speak, on this for this use to be able to support it. They have allotted for some parking, which accounts for, you know, the residential 98 residential units and the and all the staff and patients, family members, et cetera. And you know, this bringing in this huge amount, you know, sort of influx of people on a daily basis without actually sort of taking into account how that is going to further impinge on these buildings from a usage point of view. You know, the staff apparently has been allotted some bicycle parking. I can tell you as a physician, we require oftentimes to be going to various different sites. A bicycle is not going to cut it. You know, we need a vehicle to be able to get to different locations. Most of the staff is going to be arriving with vehicles. As it is, there isn't enough space in their designs, at least, for any of that. Patients being dropped off on Montgomery, which is a very small, you know, it's a major thoroughfare used by the police, EMS, et cetera, but at the same time, it's a single lane at this point, and patients being dropped off are going to be double parking in front, stopping traffic, et cetera. You know, and I realize that some of this is probably more zoning, but I do feel that this directly impacts the overall community, you know, as well as the look and the
30
character
seconds.
and the feel of the historic buildings that comprise the campus. So last comment, just tagging on to Ulana's comment about the skyline and visibility. You can also see the Beacon campus from the air when you're landing into Newark, and it's pretty glorious. That's it.
Thank you. All
Thank you.
right, next up, we have Nasrin.
Hi, again.
Did we have to swear her in again?
It remains under oath.
Great.
But
All right,
you-
Nasrin,
But you
then
need
you're,
to state and spell your name for the record again.
Nasrin Nourizadeh, Nasrin, last name Nourizadeh.
okay. Your 3 minutes begins now.
Thank you very much for this opportunity, and I appreciate all the panelists' comments and the commissioners' insight into this. It is kind of a relief to see that so many people have paid attention to this very important site. And this is the place that we call home. For many, it might be just a land, or for some might be a piece of land that they can develop, but it's our home. And I understand that this is a historical site, but this is our home. And I know that a lot of our neighbors have talked about different points of view, but what I wanted to raise here is that after the meeting that we had with the architect in our site, we put a petition together, which I would be happy to send a link to you guys. But the title is Save Jersey City's National Historic Treasure. And the top line says, use the power of public domain and turn the cause for outrage into community green space for our children and seniors. As of now, 471 people have signed this petition. This is on online signatures. And we were able to collect about 300 signatures on paper with the same flyer. So I wanted to highlight that there are other options if the city is open to it. So long as the committee comes together, and I think the best suggestion is that do not build anything on this site. Keep the green space and make it into a more accessible park for the community, whether it is the senior people and the building in the Jones Hall building or the Beacon community. We all need more space. And to the point of having taller buildings on the Beacon campus, I would again highlight that we have a lot of green space surrounding those tall buildings, but the new development will not have any, and it will just take away the space that we already have. So these are my comments. And the other thing that I wanted to add very quickly is that I don't think anyone is representing the senior citizens living in the Jones Hall. I think they are even the worst being impacted because these people, the seniors, there's going to be a huge block shadowing them, blocking their windows, and also creating a lot of safety issues and security issues for them with all the traffic and hazards from the medical center and all kinds of things that can go with it. And no one is representing these senior citizens that are living in the adjacent building. That is all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up we have Christina. Christina, there we go.
Would you raise your right hand to be sworn? Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. State and spell your full name for the record, please.
Sure. Christina Noonan, Christina. Last name is Noonan, Noonan.
Thank you. I'm going to begin your timer now.
I just want to start by thanking everyone for their time staying on late. I'm currently calling in from another country. It's past almost 1 a.m. So you can tell how important this is to our community by our dedication to come and speak. I wanted to make a comment about some of the viewpoints that were shown in the presentation today. I was disappointed, to say the least, that there wasn't any rendering showing the impact of the height and scale of the building to the direct views to the beacon itself from what I would consider the primary entrance. Given that historically the primary entrance was on the west side of the building, I would argue that the primary entrance is now from Montgomery. So if we look at a pedestrian's view from Montgomery towards the beacon, many of the prime views for pedestrians will be blocked, including people who live in the area. I would also like to point out, as a classically trained architect with a degree in, I have a professional bachelor's degree in architecture, that I think the argument could also be made as we consider the change in heights of buildings from another angle. If we were looking east towards the beacon and looking at the setback from that direction, the original height constraint, the max height of 110 feet, it better reflects the setback of the two portions of the Rialto and Capitol buildings that have a setback around that height as well. And that original max height of this space would better speak to the increase in height and the gradual change of height in that direction. So I think that point wasn't made by the architect in trying to support a change in height in one dimension, but not considering the other direction. I think that point needed to be made for the historic committee as well, in considering the views of the building and also the gradual change in height and how it reflects other portions of the buildings around it. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Okay, next up we have Lamar. Lamar, you should, oh, there we go.
There we go. Raise your right hand to be sworn, please. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes,
Thank you. State and spell your full name for the record.
yes. My name is Lamar Auguste, Lamar, last name Auguste, Auguste,
Spell the last name again.
Auguste, Auguste.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to start your timer now.
Great, thank you. I just wanted to follow on to Christina's point and Eugene's point earlier. Actually, I think a number of people made the point. How prominent this building is going to sort of present if allowed to be erected on the Montgomery streetscape. If you're walking, and it's interesting and notable, I think, that the images that were presented this evening by the architect didn't really fully capture, you know, the significance of this building if you're walking straight down Montgomery east. What happens is this building would be actually the most prominent building in the complex if you're walking straight down on the east side of Montgomery, moving towards downtown Jersey City. It would protrude out, fully obliterate the view of the Jones building. And to the right of it, you know, because the lawn would sit in front of it, would be the three additional beacon buildings that, you know, would actually sort of, you know, stand one in front of the other. So really you're capturing, or you'll be seeing mostly this building. And I think to allow for significant variances for the construction of a building that essentially is going to usurp, you know, the prominence of this beautiful Art Deco masterpiece is a big issue, and really shouldn't be allowed. No one building should be allowed to be erected that diminishes the larger project. And that's exactly what it would do if you're walking down Montgomery and you're seeing this building, which, by the way, they have made improvements to their to, you know, what they're contemplating, but now it's really going to sort of, you know, take away from really the only building that sort of sits next to it, which would be the Mercury. That's what you would see. It would be the Mercury, and then there would be this 591. So I'm not sure if that should be allowed, given how it protrudes into the Montgomery Street streetscape. So anyway, thank you for your time. I have nothing more to share at this point.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I
Okay.
see no more hands raised. So I think we can make a motion to close public comment.
Motion to close. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All right. So given the nature of the application, that the applicant is going to take the comments that they heard from the HPC and from the public this evening to make some further revisions, I feel pretty comfortable saying we can carry this to a date uncertain.
All right. I'll make it. Go
Oh,
ahead.
hold on, Jen.
Yeah, if I could just speak to that point. Well, I mean, we're fine with the board carrying it to a date uncertain, but is there any indication as to when the next potential date might be? I mean, obviously.
The May 15th meeting is the next meeting we have space on.
Okay.
So if you would like, we can carry it to that.
That would be the applicant's preference, and then to the extent that there is further time needed, we're happy to then carry it further. That way
Okay.
at least we have a working date to work toward.
Yeah, I think I'm perfectly fine with that. So the recommended condition on this would be to carry to the May 15th meeting.
Okay, I'll make a motion to carry this to the May 15th meeting.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, well, we will see you guys at the May 15th meeting. For the public left in attendance, you guys can go ahead and pencil that in on your calendar for that hearing as well. And we'll do our best to keep any members of the public interested updated. You can send us an email. We're happy to help distribute those agendas. Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now we're gonna go back to new business. This is the only other item in new business. This is number 9B, case H22-042. This is Deborah David Architect, LLC applicant on behalf of 75 Sussex Street LLC owner. This is for 78 Sussex Street, block 14402, lot 5 in the Polosuc Historic District. And this is for a certificate of appropriateness for the repair and replacement of the fence surrounding the front areaway of a contributing circa 1855 Italianate row house in the Polosuc Historic District. This work includes the removal and replacement of historic fences at the west property line with a new portion of wrought iron fence to match the existing non-original street-facing fence.
Dan?
I am going to take leave since my case has been adjourned until the 15th of May. Okay, so
right.
just wanted to wish everyone a good night.
Good night, Dan. Take care.
Night, Dan.
Thank you.
Good night, Dan.
Good night, all.
Maggie, we have the applicant being promoted.
Yes, and I do just want to, there was one other announcement that I forgot earlier. There's a typo on the agenda for this application. The block and lot is correct. The address is 75 Sussex Street, like the owner is indicated in the ownership section. I just typed it in wrong. Legally, we're fine because the block and lot is correct. Just wanted to make that a note. Deb, are you presenting this application? Do you want me to promote anyone else?
You can promote Richard Klein.
Okay.
He may not say anything, but we'll see.
Richard, can you raise your hand, please? I see just a Klein. I don't know if that's you though. Oh, yep, okay. Perfect. All right. Once he's able to join, we can go ahead and get you guys sworn in.
Okay, cool.
And Deborah,
Now,
right hand to be sworn before you say anything else. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
yes, I affirm.
And if you could state and spell your full name for the record.
My name is Deborah David, Debra David, David.
Great, thank you.
Staff notes that Deb has previously been qualified in front of this board as an expert in the field of architecture.
Mr. Klein, would you raise your right hand to be sworn? Swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
It will be.
And could you state and spell your full name for the record?
Richard, R-I-C-H-A-R-D, Klein, K-L-E-I-N.
Thank you.
Okay, so you took care of the 78, right?
Yes, sorry about that.
No, it's okay. It
Sorry, I
happens.
didn't get this. So you took care of the what? The Southern DA?
No,
No,
yeah,
on
yeah. No, the typo.
Oh, okay. Great. That's really good.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen now. If I can find it. Okay, this is, let me go to another page to show you the whole Okay, this building is on,
Deb, your screen is not shared.
it's
You have-
not.
You have permission. You have permission to do so. I don't, maybe you might have to share one window instead of the whole screen or vice versa, depending on what you did.
You know, I just forgot to hit that. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, this is 75 Sussex Street. The tax photo is on the left. It is unfortunately not a very clear photo of it, of the building, but we'll just have to deal with it. The section of the fence that fronts 75 Sussex Street runs east to west and is original in our opinion, and is seen in a very murky 1938 photo. I don't think we had spoken before about the existing fence being not original, but we were assuming that it was. The portion of the fence has the street side portion of the fence has historical significance for the house, and the length of fence that goes north to south, which I will switch to just the plan.
Maggie, Commissioner Gucciardo is in attendees. I don't know what happened there.
Oh, hold on.
Sorry for the interruption.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks for getting me back in. Appreciate it.
Sorry, Stephen. I have no idea what happened there.
Just a bad connection. I lost connection with you guys for a bit.
All right.
Okay, so this application only addresses the fence, not the layout of the front yard, which we've already been approved for. The part of the fence that we're talking about, we're going to repair the street side fence and gate. There's several different rotted areas on the bottom of the wrought iron, and we're planning on fixing that. But then at some point, whenever 77 Sussex was torn down, they obviously took out the dividing fence between 75 and 77. And it's our theory that they went over to the salvage yard and picked up 3 different pieces of wrought iron that would fit there, and made a ersatz fence. It doesn't match anything else along the street or the front, any place on the street. We don't know when 77 Sussex Street was removed or when that piece of fencing was removed. We don't have evidence of what the fence that separated the 2 properties looked like at that time. Richard purchased the building in 1989, along with those 3 separate pieces of fence that served as a separation between 75 and 77. Let's see. Certainly they may be historic pieces, but they don't contribute to 75 fence at the perimeter. And it's another problem is that where the curved portion is, that's on 77's property. And what we're proposing to do is follow the design of the front of the main fence and extend it on the property line where it should be, so it doesn't cause trouble in the future when they build something on 77. you know, I can show you what this is the fence part that's next to the building. And then there's this stretch of very, very simple picket fence, but it has a curve, and they obviously said, oh, well, we've got this curve, so we'll just put it here, but it's not on our property at this point. And then at the corner, there is this other piece of fence, which it's a lovely little fence, but it doesn't match the front of the building, the front fence at all. And here is a picture of what's at the front property line. This is the fence that's on the front property line. You know, it's to us, it seems pretty straightforward that we need to remove those 3 extra portions and replace it with something, you know, with something that either blends in or replicates what's on the street side. Let's see. I'm not sure exactly what else I can say about it, but you know, it's something that I'm hoping that you guys will agree with us on it. And here's more pictures of the street light. Now, everybody else along the block has probably, you know, I don't know whether they ever came to the commission or not, but they use these cast iron fences. And we were advised not to present that. And here's some more pictures of the front yard from last summer. This is the condition of many of the pieces on the fence at the street side that are going to be repaired. And yet more, and yet more.
Deborah, I have 2 questions for you, if I may.
Sure.
The first question is, did you say that you thought that what is currently on the street side, that fence you believe is original to the building?
I thought, I think it's hard to say whether that it's not. Looking at this photo, which is too bad that it's in such, you know, sketchy shape. But you can see that if you look at close, we can't see the portion that's in the, you know, got this blackened area. But if you look at the bottom, it seems like the spacing of the wrought iron railing is similar. Right. And I can see, to me, I mean, Maggie and I always disagree on these things. I see certain things and she sees certain things, but I think that there is a cross piece where this cross piece is right here.
Okay.
Over here.
Thank you. The other question I had is, one of the photos you showed of the facade had no fence across the front.
That's due to an overzealous contractor.
So that fence has already been taken out, correct?
It's in the backyard.
Okay, all right.
It's not gone.
Okay,
yeah,
good.
It's not gone.
Just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Oh, no, perfectly valid question. So, you know, to me, this is pretty straightforward, a little bit different than the last 2, but we're asking to make something, to put up something that's compatible with the front fence on the side.
I mean, Janelle, were you going to speak?
Well, I just have a question or couple of questions that maybe step back a little bit. And the first is, is this building part of a row, and what is the fence at those other buildings? If it's
I
part
can
of-
show you, yeah, I can show you that.
And then also, what is the age of this building, and to sort of help us gauge whether or not the street fence may actually be original or might be a replacement.
Hold on a second, I've got that on the front page someplace. I believe, well, they're pretty old. These buildings were pretty old. They were, hold on. Oh, I think that it's like mid 1800s.
Yeah, according to the description, it lists it as an 1855 building.
Yeah. So if I pull out, I did include some pictures of the streetscape further on down, I thought. I'm gonna have to bring that up, see if I can. Most of the other houses down the block have those cast iron fences. Let me pull up. Let me pull up some other pictures. Sorry, I had it all organized at one point, and now this is. Oh, darn. Sorry about that. I've lost
No worries.
I've lost one of my photos. Well, most of them are like this. They've got the big, the newel post with the big, cast iron ball at the top. I can also bring up the streetscape on the Vile Google, if you don't mind.
That'll work.
We do just, we can mark this as evidence, Bridget. I believe this will be A1 for them.
And I
A1 in evidence.
Thank you, Bridget.
and now I got to find out where we are. Okay, right here. Come on, let's go down the street, folks. So one time it doesn't work. Here we go. This is what most of the, several of the other ones. This is at 73. And they've also, a lot of the other houses have these cast iron railings at the stairway too. We also have, this is at 71. And then we go down to 69, which is also the cast, and then 79. Now you're making me do math.
67.
69, 67. Okay, here's 67.
Also cast iron.
Also cast iron. These are easily purchased from King Ironworks. And then this is our other building at 65, but we left that railing there intact. So does that help?
Yeah, I think that helps provide a little more context about.
Okay.
Thank you.
Certainly. Anybody else need any more Google, or can I just close it?
I think you can close it for now.
Okay. And
I mean, my thought based on the age of the building being 1855 is that these are probably not the original. They may very well be historic. And maybe they date to when those railings on the stoop went in, which we see all over and some people.
Right. Now, are you talking about the street side?
Yeah, I'm
fence?
talking about the street side. As for the ones on the west facing, the ones that with the Anthemians on them
Mhm.
are they seem very old. And if you maybe it's picture 15 shows them. Like you see them elsewhere, you see them a lot in like the East Village, you see them in the West Village. You don't see a ton of them in Jersey City with those Anthemians there.
They don't make this
Yeah.
casting anymore either. So that's why our theory is that somebody, whoever took down 77 took the fence with them, and then the people that lived in 75 previously, here's the one you're talking about. It's very pretty, but it doesn't, and also if you see at the top, they bracketed on, they clipped on these spikes at the top, which is really,
Wow.
really, yeah, but evidently that didn't deter anybody. I just think that it, well, one of the big problems is that the curved part of the fence and that the part that's past this view is not on the property. It's on the neighboring property. So that's a problem. Yeah, here, look at this. Very clever. And then this is part of the other piece. And then on the corner, somebody got really creative. And that, I think that they just, I mean, they did, Richard bought the building in '89. So anybody, that's before a lot of the Palosoke area was dolled up. And so it was probably the best that they could do at the time. And they just wanted their property, closed off.
So the request is to repair the street side fence and duplicate that for the adjacent fence,
Correct.
right? Okay.
And
Okay.
And it's, it's okay.
Let's just say, are there any other questions for Deborah, the owner? Doesn't seem like it. Deborah, is there anything else? Any other?
No, not at all. No.
I do have one now that I think of it. Excuse me,
Okay.
Deborah, I'm sorry. And I'll start my video too, apologize. The rest of the application that's already been approved, is it changing any of the ironwork on the stairs?
No.
Okay, thank you.
And that's unless you have any other questions, that's pretty much where we are right now.
I have a question for Maggie. Maggie, is there a picture of 77 in the tax records that maybe we could get a reference of the fence that was taken away between both properties?
I included a better version of 75, Paul, and 77 in the data portal.
Okay.
Let me share my screen. Admittedly, the 77 photo is not great, but you can see 75 a little better.
You want me to stop sharing?
I think if I share, Deb, it'll automatically kick you out. So let's see if this works. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so this is the slightly better version of 75, which you can see the
Oh, this is a nicer picture.
the current street facing fence is there, and staff wasn't arguing that it wasn't there in 1938.
Okay.
And you can see a little of what's left over at 77, including what looks like at least that front fence with the leaf detail. You can't see just because of the nature of the photo, but you can see the fence further to the back with the spikes, the posts. And then
But it's not the same fence. There's a spiked fence, but I don't believe.
And what about can we zoom what's in front of 77? Because it looks kind of the same from 75 to 77 in the front. But
there's a closed captioning message over my Zoom, so it just took me far too long to find it. Okay. That's 77.
No, I wish I would have had this photo.
I thought I sent this to you, Deb. If I didn't,
No, I only have the really crappy one. I mean,
so even though
like
the building is completely different, the fence kind of looks the same in front of both properties. So it leads me to believe that there may have been the same thing in the separating them, because it looks like the ironwork for both properties was done at the same time.
This is the tax card for 78, or 77 rather. As you can see, it's not great.
Yeah, terrible.
But to me, it doesn't look like it has the same detail that 75 has. 77, now my tab isn't loading. 77 seems to be much simpler. Come on, please. Thank you.
Well, I can see the little hearts.
No, it's the same.
Yep. Boy, I wish these had gotten scanned at a higher resolution.
As the owner, I'm trying to sit back and let the experts speak, but even if there is a difference between the two, which I'm not convinced that there is, it nonetheless carries the same spirit. Whereas if you compare 75 Sussex Street, for example, to currently what 73 Sussex Street is, it's not even in the same spirit. So considering that the spirit is the same, certainly the perimeter going from that north to south, which we're trying to put back in that, and I'll use that word spirit, it conforms, and we're hoping that you'll see that on that basis. I'm not hearing anything. Did I lose it?
Should we continue?
Yeah, go ahead.
Let's move along. Do we need to hear any public comment on this?
Yeah, I suppose we can move to public comment. If there's no other questions from any commissioners and nothing else Deborah or Mr. Klein would like to add, could open up to public comment at this point.
Okay, if there are any members of the public in attendance tonight who would like to speak on this application, please use the raise hand function at the bottom of the screen. If you're on the phone, you can press *9. Okay, staff sees no hands raised and recommends a motion to open and close public comment.
Motion. Thank you.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, we can move over to staff comments, Sarah.
Okay, everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I will skip down to staff comments. Or staff recommendations, rather. Over. So after reviewing the proposed project, staff finds that the proposal is inconsistent with the historic design standards and rules and regulations, as well as with the Secretary of the Interior standards for the treatment of historic properties. As we saw with the two tax cards, it appears that historic site and photographic evidence demonstrate that these features of the three different sections of fence existed concurrently, as the extant street-facing fence is present in the 1938 tax card photo. And the removal of the historic fence along the west property line and subsequent replacement with a reproduction of the street-facing fence would create a false sense of the property's history. I have a couple of treatment options from the Secretary of the Interior standards for the treatment of historic properties. The recommended treatment for the preservation and restoration of metals, including wrought and cast iron, includes, but is not limited to, identifying, retaining, and preserving metal features from the restoration period. And the proposal for this fence, per the application, is a replacement that is not matching the existing historic fabric, specifically the existing historic fabric along the western property line. And this removal and replacement is specifically listed as a not recommended treatment under the Secretary of Interior standards for the treatment of historic properties. Further in the treatment of historic properties, guidelines under design for the replacement of missing and historic features contains guidance for properties that have changed over time, and where those changes have acquired significance, reestablish missing historic features generally should not be undertaken if the missing features did not coexist with the features concurrently on the building. Juxtaposing historic features that did not exist concurrently will result in a false sense of the building's history. And per our ordinance 345-71A2, the removal or alteration of any historic material or distinctive architectural features should be avoided when possible. Continuing in 345-71A4, changes which may have taken place in the course of time are evidence of the history and development of a building, structure, or site and its environment. These changes may have acquired significance in their own right, and this significance shall be recognized and respected. And per 345-71A6, deteriorated architectural features shall be repaired rather than replaced wherever possible. In the event that replacement is necessary, the new material shall match the material being replaced in composition, design, color, texture, and other visual qualities. Repair or replacement of missing architectural features shall be based on accurate duplications of features substantiated by historical, physical, or pictorial evidence rather than on conjectural design or the availability of different architectural elements from other buildings or structures. Per 345-71, a certificate of no effect will be granted for replacement of missing, non-historic, or severely deteriorated historic fences and railings, provided that the new ironwork matches the historic ironwork based on documentation such as historic photographs, extant examples on identical buildings, or remnants of the historic ironwork. And again, per the ordinance, a certificate of appropriateness is required for alterations to or remove of historic fences and railings. While staff finds that the methodology identified for the proposed repair and restoration of the extant non-original street-facing fence appears appropriate in scope, the subsequent removal of two sections of historic fence along the west property line to match the street-facing fence is inappropriate and in direct nonconformance to the historic design standards and rules and regulations, as well as the Secretary of the Interior standards for the treatment of historic properties. These various sections of fence around the property's front areaway demonstrates the changes and development that have taken place to the property as well as streetscape over time. As noted in the ordinance, these changes may have acquired significance in their own right, and the significance shall be recognized and respected. The proposal to remove the historic sections of fence and replace them with a reproduction of the street-facing fence when historic site and photographic evidence demonstrate that these features existed concurrently would create a false sense of the property's history. The approval to remove these portions of fence would degrade the integrity of setting, design, materials, workmanship, and feeling of the property, which is not an appropriate course of action. HPC staff recommends that this application for certificate of appropriateness be denied, as it would have an adverse effect on both the property, the surrounding properties, and the Paulus Hook Historic District as a whole. HPC staff hopes, if the application is denied, that the applicant will submit a subsequent application to repair and restore the existing historic fence. And then I have the specific ordinance citations for the denial of certificate of appropriateness.
Okay, can I comment? Can I go back and comment now? Ugh, am I?
Maybe we should have some
I-
commissioner discussion first and then.
Okay, go ahead.
Sorry,
Go
Deb.
ahead.
So-
Okay, go for it.
No, do any
Um,
commissioners have any
Commissioners have
questions
some questions?
for Sarah prior to Deborah's commenting?
Okay, I'll jump in. So Sarah, your reading of the 1938 tax photos is that these three sort of mismatched sections on the west side of the property, those were there in the 1938 tax photo?
Yes, based from what I can assess, based on the age of that first section with the leaf pattern, that very old section, that's not immediately visible, but based on the age of that fence, my assumption is that that was also present there in addition to the back fence and the street facing fence.
The leaf
Okay.
fence, I'm sorry to jump in, maybe you should bring up the photo and maybe show it to us, Sarah?
And can I ask Miss David, I believe you said that your understanding was that those fences had been brought in when the neighboring property was demolished in, I
That's-
think you might have said the 80s?
I don't have any idea when the building was removed, but it was prior to 1989 when Richard purchased the building. Also, I would like to point out that, I don't see any way you can see that back portion on there. And also, it's not on our property. It's on 77's property.
I have to agree that I can't tell what that adjoining property fence is made out of. So Sarah, I'm not sure how you're determining from this photograph that it's the material that is in Deborah's presentation, those photographs. Could you help us see where you're making that connection? Because I'm having difficulty.
I could pull up Deb's stuff again. You can see the street facing fence detail.
Yeah, and that looks very much, if not identical to the photos being presented by Deborah, correct? Do we
Correct.
agree on that?
That we're 100% agreeing on.
Okay, so the issue lies with
What's happening on this
replacement.
I'm
the
sorry,
side fence.
please don't speak over one another, Commissioner Gutierrez. Okay,
Yeah.
so the issue,
So the issue is that we're saying that there is historic fabric in place on the adjoining property side that staff is suggesting we should preserve.
Yes. Let's see if this
I'm
photo-
just having difficulty seeing that from that photograph.
I have a
Agreed.
question.
Yes.
If that fence is in fact original on the west side of number 75, why does it have a curve in it? Or if it's there for X amount of years, why does it have a curve in it? If it is original, it should just be straight.
Mhm.
It shouldn't have a curve in it at all. It never would have.
Well, maybe
If I
not
may-
original to 1855, but prior to 1938 at some point may have been added. And I think that's why Sarah is saying it's a sort of a product of its time, and this could be an interesting example of that if I think there were better photographic evidence to support it. It's hard to tell.
Because I'm not, admittedly, I'm not seeing the same sort of heart detail that's in this photo on this fence, especially, I mean, again, this is not a great photo. This is 77's tax card. And this to me seems like a fairly straight post fence.
Yeah, is that Maggie speaking, if I may?
That's
On the
Sarah.
on the photo that you're seeing right now, that you have right on top, if you look at the piece of iron that goes vertical, it goes not vertical, it goes horizontal, about, let's just say 3 feet from the street level, you can see a straight line wrought iron that continues from one building right through the other. Pretty much, you can see it first quarter to the left, and then you see it just to the right of the center, which would be the 17, and then it blackens out. There is a continuation of a design there that goes from one property to the other. And then, and I'm trying not to say too much because I'd like the experts to speak, but on it would be, I think you would be challenged, and of course I'm not an expert, but I think you would be challenged to find a perimeter fence that goes north-south between any two structures that has a curve in it. Why would they put it in? It just doesn't make sense. It encroaches on one person's property line over the other. So in absence of being able to clearly identify that those pieces were in place in the 1938 tax photo, I might suggest, just by presence of the curve itself, that one neighbor over the other would object to the existence of a curve because it would encroach on their own property line and not provide a clear kind of zoning delineation.
Well, clearly the curved fence was installed at some point, but I suppose your point is that it could not have been installed before the neighboring property was demolished.
That would be my point. And I think in this photo, even though it's not crystal clear, it certainly is not obvious that it is there. And since we use 1938 as, well, I understand that you consider anything that was put in after it as historic, as possibly having historical significance. It seems to be that it was just put there for a safety factor once 77 was destroyed, and we don't have those dates.
I think it's real. This is a really murky one. The curve is very strange. I can't think I've ever seen a curved fence in between on property lines. It's very odd. I think there's no question that these are old fences and you know, depending on how we define historic. The thing that I'm struggling with is especially the one that is closer to the street where you have those amphibians. That's a very interesting detail that you don't see very often in Jersey City. I mean, I'm kind of leaning towards the opinion that these fences were salvaged and brought there.
Right.
When that is, I don't know that we can definitively answer that.
Right. Right. Well,
I definitely see especially if you look on this photograph in front of the sidewall of the stoop, you can see the curve of the what we call the heart, you know. So I think I think we've confirmed that this fence at the street facing portion of the yard looks like it was there by 1938. I don't think any of this is probably original to the building, including the iron on the stoop sidewalls themselves.
I agree with everything you just said, Brian. The stoop railings are not original. We know that from experience, right? That was, you know, the sidewalls were added to those steps, those railings were added, but they are there in 1938, which is also important. That's the only evidence we have. I think we can agree that the front fence, they're only asking to repair and keep it in good shape. So I don't think anyone disagrees. They're not asking to change the front fence. So
Correct. Yeah.
That seems acceptable to all, right?
Yes.
With the lack of visual evidence, from my point of view on the side fence, I find it a little difficult to impose those existing pieces that were cobbled together on this property, unless the commission's saying whether they were cobbled together or not, they're still significant in their own right, if that's what the commission's saying, but I don't see how it significantly impacts the building to keep those there.
You think that it's okay to leave them there?
No,
No,
I'm
he's saying-
saying,
Oh,
no,
okay.
I'm saying that they don't make any significant.
No, they don't
impact
make
on-
sense.
Well, sometimes things that don't make sense still should be there because they're somehow historically significant to the history of the building. But just in this case, I don't think that's the case. I think there would be no harm done to continue the design adjacent to the front.
He's agreeing with us, Deborah.
Yeah.
Right. Don't fight him, Deborah. He's agreeing with us.
The other point I'd like to bring out is that if we do keep,
believe me, yes, please.
If we do move to keep the existing west fences, how are we correcting the curve without altering that fence as well? It's still not going to be in its original placement. It has to be moved. It has to be straightened out, which would mean cutting some of it off because it would then be too long. And I just don't see, how this is ever going to become compatible looking with having 4 different kinds of railing on this one building, which is what it comes down to. You have a front railing, you have stoop railings, and you have these 2 pieces on the side. And then what's on the other side of the house where it meets number 73? Something else entirely different again.
If I may, Deborah, do you want to answer that question or should I?
Well, no, I mean, the one at 73 is a cast iron fence that the people next door had.
Right.
They installed, probably without going to the commission.
Well,
if I may for the
I
minute,
like this one.
I think the commissioner may be questioning not the separation between 75 and 73, but he may be questioning that we're only proposing to replace the curved portion of the 3 portions on that north-south perimeter between 75 and 77. What we're asking the commission to allow us to do is to remove the 3 portions, one which is very small, on that western perimeter that separates 75 and 77, and put in something that is kind of consistent with the design of the frontage, the street frontage of 75, and that will complement the history and will participate in the future history of the building, whereas what is currently there now, while might be considered historic, does not really add any significance other than the fact that it was put up there to provide some kind of protection once 77 was lost. It doesn't provide any historical significance to 75 Sussex Street in and of itself. It's only that it was to prevent access from that part of the building. And that's why there are 3 pieces that don't even speak to one another, and they don't speak to the frontage. So we would like to remove those 3 pieces, put something in that's more appropriate, that when a historic commission is meeting in 30 years from now, they can go, there's historical significance to these pieces because the commission sat down and decided that something better should be put in place at this point in time.
Okay, so I think the crux for me is that, I know that the western facing portion of the fence, certainly old, might be historic. especially with those pieces, the Enthymiones, which we see in other locations. But, looking on this block, I don't see, if this were a pristine block with the same type of fence returning on, towards the property line with that motif, that Enthymion motif, I would feel differently about this, but I just don't think this rises to the level where, we need to deny for a denial. So that's my current thought, and I think that's what I'm hearing from the commissioners, but everyone else can speak up as well.
Yeah, I agree.
Chime in for a second.
It's hard to tell with certainty, but it does seem like a salvage job. And if these pieces had been there in 1938, we could say definitively, then I think we would have a tough question. This would be difficult to puzzle out what the right solution is, but being that there isn't evidence for that, I think there's no support for keeping it. Just because the material may be historic, that doesn't mean that it has significance in its current placement if it was just placed there within the last few decades. And then I think that leads us to a question about what is being proposed for that west side. I know it's supposed to match the existing in the front facade, but I'm just looking at the what was submitted, and it says that the motif is for discussion only and the dimensions will be confirmed later. I don't know if that's something that we need to look more closely at, or that can be addressed at the staff level.
I did that because the iron worker is going to make me shop drawings.
Yeah, that was just in place of shop drawings for presentation.
Right.
But the intention is to duplicate the fence on the front, correct? We're not talking about some other alternative design, right? It's going to match the front. Okay, thank you.
Yes.
So I just wanted to thank Sarah for providing us all the information that she did and taking all the time that she did on this. I agree that those sections of fence are historic, but I also agree that they are salvage. No contractor is ever going to put in a section of fence and then piece another section of fence in with a radius in it on a straight property line. Wouldn't happen. It's a salvage section. So because it's salvage, it doesn't have historic significance for the building. It was put there just like if there were 6 front windows on the building and one of them was 6/6 and the others were 2/2. It wouldn't be appropriate to keep it. Even if it's a historic window or just like a historic piece of fencing, it's not historic to this building. It's historic, but not to this building. So I would agree that it needs to be placed with the rest of the application is to replace that side fence with what was the original, what was the 38 photograph fencing at the face. And the applicant has the right to bring the building back to a certain period. If he goes back to the 38 photograph, that should be then that same front fence, and the fence between the two property lines should be appropriately the same. And I believe that when I look at that photograph, it's a straight line. Sarah provided that better photograph, and it appears to me to be a straight line between the two on the property line. So in lieu of a better photograph that said it was completely something else, I think we have to allow the applicant to have the opportunity to get approval for this application. We just took out one block from here, tons of different patterned iron railings at the Washington Square. Now, what was it, about a year and a half ago? And there were about 7 or 8 different kinds of railing in there. There were layers of railing everywhere, and we had them take out tons of it. So I don't see why we can't allow this applicant to get approval for this application.
Thanks, Tony. I think you put it well. For the second time tonight, you summed everything up. So I think we have, an approval here. Sarah, did you prepare? Should we prepare some conditions of approval? I know you had written your report for a denial, but I think this one could be like the standard ones, require shop drawings.
Mm-hmm.
to be submitted and approved by staff. And I think there could be a note, something that, that the ironwork can be removed, that they are, appear to be salvaged material. While historic, they appear to be salvaged and, are not necessarily in keeping with the rest of this block on Sussex Street and its removal. No historic fabric will be damaged by their removal or something like that.
Is there any point in trying to hold on to those historic railings that'll be going to be pulled out, at least the one with the Endymions? Because I think you mentioned that one is particularly old. Or is that just up to Mr.
That's going in my backyard.
I was gonna say,
You could, yes. I wouldn't just put that in the trash, so please don't do that.
No, no.
There are houses on Wayne Street between Barrow and Grove that have these those particular railings with the flowers down at the bottom on the south side of Wayne Street. So they are around, but very far and few between.
does the applicant have any objection to the request to salvage the material?
The applicant has no request and is so
No.
grateful for the commissioners.
Okay, no objection, I meant to say, yeah, thank you.
Did I say no objection? Did I say regret? The applicant has no objection. They would like to see those pieces find their correct historical home.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
very good.
Maybe can be given to an iron fabricator, and maybe mold can be made so that houses on Wayne Street or anywhere else in Jersey City that are looking for replication of the same railing, they'd be able to resource it somehow, being it's no longer available.
Maybe I'll look into. I'll wander around town and see if I can find where you're talking about on Wayne Street. Between what block and what block?
Between Grove and Barrow,
Okay.
on the south side of the street.
Okay. I'll check it out.
My memory's recollection, which very rarely fails me.
You're
but-
amazing, Paul.
It's no, but it's
I think I was-
on the same side as Barrow Mansion.
Correct, but the block before.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so
I'm ready to make a motion with conditions. If we have a set of conditions, I would say, I know that one of them would be that Deborah David is retained as the architect. That would be pending approval by staff of shop drawings. And material samples.
Yeah, so on this, what I wrote down was provide shop drawings, our standard conditions, which of course include tab being retained, changes have to come back to the board. Material samples need to come to staff for review. We can add a condition in there that recommends that the applicant salvage the existing railings on site. Did I miss any?
That all sounds good to me.
That's what I have as
I think
well.
that's sufficient. Sarah, did you have anything else?
No, I think that covers it.
Okay, I'll make a motion with those conditions as read out by Maggie O'Neill.
I'll second.
Jinx. Kelly on that. All right. Before I do a roll call, Deb and Richard, I assume you accept the conditions?
That would be yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Great. All right. Commissioner Lewis,
Hi.
Commissioner Amatuzzo,
Aye.
Commissioner Cronin,
Aye.
Commissioner Gucciardo,
Aye.
Commissioner Gordon,
Aye.
Commissioner Gunther.
Aye.
Commissioner Garriga is absent, Commissioner Sakong is absent, Commissioner Stango is absent, Vice Chair Sankamp,
Aye.
and Chairman Blazak.
Aye.
Okay, there are 8 votes in favor, none against, no abstentions. The COA is granted.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Guys, all right, have a nice night.
Thank you.
All right,
And so we will,
there we go. Okay. Oh, hold on. I want to make sure I didn't actually demote. All right, I think we're good now. Did I accidentally demote anyone? Nope, we're good. All right, sorry. I'm living in panic that I accidentally demoted Stephen before he. I don't think I did.
Sorry.
No, it's not your fault. Don't worry. All right. Moving on for tabled cases. We are actively working on getting some of these off. I know that there are a lot on here. In particular, 148 Jewett. They will. Something will happen with this before.
If you say so.
Wasn't President Obama was president when that came on, I think, right?
Yes.
I'm still working there when it came on.
It's been carried for 6 years. They got a very kind email from me today saying, I know you keep saying this is an active case. I need plans. If not, May 15th, it's coming off. If you don't get plans by the distribution deadline for that meeting, it's coming off. So we'll see. Similar for French American and Sugartown. Both of those got notices today saying that they need to, actually no, Sugartown got a notice today, French Americans tomorrow. They need to get me stuff before the next meeting. 11 Erie Street, that one has not been on for that long. That is where I'm working with the attorneys on that. Similar with 289 Pavonia. And 218 Fifth is coming in the next meeting, which is April 3rd. So hopefully we'll get some of those through. I have no resolutions to introduce, discuss, or memorialize. We do not need an executive session, so that just leaves us with adjournment.
Oh, don't we need to do re-elections, or isn't that that's next month? So we can do that at the April 3rd meeting?
I'm gonna be honest with you. No, we have to do a selection committee now.
Okay.
Just forgot to put it on there. Thank you.
And I am out. I have had 2 terms, so someone else is going to take over.
I wonder why you remembered this, Brian.
I've been looking forward to not running the meeting for once.
All right. So
I've had 2 terms as vice chair as well. So
I'm happy to be on the committee. The only thing is I don't think I'm going to be here on the 3rd.
I mean, that's okay.
Okay.
So we need some volunteers for a committee for vice chair and chair. Anyone want to volunteer to help select? Brian, you had a volunteer in there. Anyone else? It's just the committee, guys. It's not the chair.
Stephen, Paul, Tony. Tony, you should be on it.
Sure.
Vice chair, we should discuss.
I'll be on it.
Okay.
Right.
Janelle, I think, should be on it. Come on, Janelle.
I'll be on it, so Brian and I can talk about it at work.
Thank you,
Okay.
Janelle.
All right.
That's it. All right.
And
Yeah,
you can nominate yourselves,
So-
except for Brian.
So we're going to have a nomination report due April 3rd.
April 3rd, and we'll vote on it at our reorg at the end of that meeting.
Okay.
Okay. So I have Janelle, Tony, Brian.
Yes.
Great. All right. Does anyone want to make a motion to nominate the nominating committee?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you for that reminder, because that completely slipped my brain.
It happens.
Just a quick note, we did not meet this month as a demo ordinance committee. There were family issues and other issues about getting the 3 commissioners together. But I feel confident we can get one together before next month.
I would agree, Tony.
Would you agree, Paul? Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Part of that is my fault. My mom passed away on Valentine's Day, and I have been out of circulation for a few weeks leading up to that, and obviously for a few weeks after. So now I am regrouping, and I hope that we can get a meeting going soon and do some walking around and looking at properties that have been affected negatively by the demolition ordinance.
My condolences, Paul.
Yeah, sorry for your
Sorry to
loss.
hear about your mother.
Thank you.
And you missed, I know you missed a great meeting last time with the designation of the extravagant.
343
Yeah.
and a half.
I want to
yes.
thank you all for that too, because Venus Extravaganza was my childhood friend. And I spent endless hours with that person. And it's important to me. Thank you.
Very good.
Maggie, can I ask, are there any updates on Subia's at 506 Jersey Ave?
No.
This is
There
my
are not.
pet project.
Oh, yes, no, so it's not for lack of trying on my end. It would just be nice if someone responded to an email. But, you know, maybe I'll just show up one day. Who knows? All right. Anything else while we're thinking of things that should have been on the agenda and we're not? All right,
No.
with that, I think we can safely adjourn for the evening.
All
Well,
right.
Thank you, Bridget. Thank you all.
Make a
Good
motion.
night,
to adjourn.
everyone. We'll see you
Second.
on the streets.
All in favor?
Aye.
Bye.
All right, it's 10:11. Have a great night, everyone.